Mhm. Right, Ali, you can see the chat, right? Like that's only on your side with the YouTube stuff. Okay. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Let me see that. Hey, Ali. You can call me. You can call me Osama, Ali. You count as my friend by now. Hmm. Yeah, I'm good. This might be a bit more of a shallow dive for us, Ali. Let's see how the conversation goes. Yeah, yeah. Mhm. That sounds very fancy. I do love being able to introduce myself as a CEO. I feel like no matter what, no one asks like, "Oh, how big is your company? How long's it been there for?" They're just like, "Oh, CEO. Oh, say no more. This must be very legit." Exactly. Oh yeah, I can see that. It says Ali no sound. I'm gonna I'm gonna
Testing,
just make
testing.
up the audio.
Oh, okay. I think they can hear me now.
I was gonna make it up and be like, "Well, Ali, this is how I look so good right now. Here's my hair thing."
Okay, guys. Oh, that would have been really, really awkward because I was
Mm.
getting all enthusiastic about the greeting, and people can't hear me. What's going on? Can they? Can we hear me now? Ali, no sound. There. Okay. I think we're finally working. We can hear you now. Wonderful. Let's try that again. Hello, Osama.
Okay, sweet.
Welcome to this episode of the Deep Dive. How are you doing?
Hi, Ali. We had such good back and forth there. I feel like we can't recreate that
I
kind of
know.
chemistry.
Yeah, we're
It
gonna
was
have
just
to.
spontaneous at the moment.
That's so sad. That's so sad.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so
Guys, we did some quips about how I'm a CEO now and how I feel very important, even though it's a small company. It's not going to be the same, but just so you know.
fantastic. Can you do a quick intro of yourself for the people in the audience who might not know who you are?
Sure. So my name's Osama. I'm a medical doctor by trade. I lived in England most of my life. Went to Imperial College London, so I wore this to represent, a bit of school loyalty.
Excellent.
And I graduated as a doctor in from London in 2016. At which point I decided to move over to the US and pursue a medical career out there. So we've known each other for a couple of years since back from medical school days. We had a couple of mutual friends. I passed crossed a couple of times at some PACSOC events, I believe.
Absolutely.
And then we rekindled our friendship later in life and our business partnership through Liberty Medics.
Yeah. So, normally in the deep dives, we like talk about like your story and all that kind of stuff. But
Hmm.
I wonder if in this one we can do
Hmm.
more of a because I've got some stuff I want to get off my chest, and I want you to
Yeah,
be my life coach. Is that all right?
yeah, yeah. So this is the thing. So for a bit of background for people, we always delay our conversations until we can film them in some capacity, so that everyone can benefit from them. So a couple of days ago, I messaged Ali, and I'm like, "Hey Ali, what's the situation? I know you maybe studying for USMLEs and things." And he told me he's having a bit of an existential crisis about all of this stuff. So we thought we'd save it for the live so that we could all share in this together. So Ali, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. We can hear you now. I want to buy glasses like you, Ollie. Thank you. Lots of love from India. Lots of love to India. Absolutely. Okay, so I'm in two minds about whether I should take the assembly. Actually,
Mm.
I'm not in two minds. I've basically gone off it completely, and I
Okay.
want and this is a bit of a crisis because
Mm.
before I left the job, I'd fully sort of been like, you know what, I want to move to America. I want to do the USMLEs and stuff. But then I started preparing for step one, and it's like it's really hard, and there's so much like new
Yeah.
content, and I feel
Yeah.
like you need to have some pretty solid motivation slash discipline to actually
Mm.
do the prep to try and get a decent score. And then after I made a video talking about how I was moving to America, a load of people reached out to me from America saying that, hey man, you should reconsider. Like it's kind of nice over here, but actually there's a lot of resident burnout. It's not
Mm.
all that it's cracked out to be. And I kind of looked a little bit more, and it just seems like it's an absolute ball ache to actually get there. You've got
Mm.
the multiple exams, then you've got kind of the electives and the sort of standardized letters of recommendation for emergency medicine, and the interviews. Once you've done that, you've got to get the visa sorted. Visas often say you can't make money on the side apart from your main hustle, which is going to be a problem for me because, as you know, I
Mm.
like making money on the side. So,
You love making money on
yeah, big fan of it. I've got some random notes in front of me actually. Those are just there. They're not a prop.
Yeah.
And so a big part of me is thinking, what's the point of doing this America thing? I kind of CBA. So this was something I wanted to talk to you about because you're the pro.
Yeah. So I think that's what you've come to. I feel like is a very typical life cycle of like a UK doctor or international doctor considering a career in the US. It reminds me of like me and my mates. We always used to sit together. I distinctly remember in third year, at the end of our third year exams, we all went to Nando's, and there's a table of about like 8 of us. And obviously Nando's is the holy grail. All conversations happen at Nando's in
Of
university.
course.
So we went there, and on that table of 8 of us, we were all spitballing about this idea of going to the US, and all of us were like, "Yeah, you know what? Yeah, like forget them here. They don't appreciate us, and like we're definitely gonna go. We're definitely gonna go." And on that table of 8 people, I'm the only one who actually ended up going to the US, and everyone else, I think, goes through these really familiar waves of like motivation, like an absolute spike where you do everything, you order all your resources, they all come together. You take that photo of yourself in front of first aid, like with the caption like "Let's go."
Yep.
And like it's like the checkbox. I felt this was like a starter kit of like hyped medical students, and then the reality hits, and then that like image that you had of yourself starts drifting further, and then the reality of the Krebs cycle starts coming closer, and like all of those things come together to cause these like really familiar like ebbs and flows in people's motivations for this journey. And that's why in the course itself, even it's a bit early for a plug like right now in the first sentence, but in the course itself we talk about at the beginning, we spend a really long time going through all these like perceived pros and cons of why moving to the US might be something that people want to do. And the reason why I think it's worth doing that is because it always comes down to that. Like, because as you're studying, you're never going to have like happy and jolly days. Even someone like you who loves studying, right? Like you love studying, you love learning new things. There's going to come that point when you're studying for the step one specifically, where you're going to be like, what? Why am I putting myself through this? You know what I mean? Like this is really more than I can handle right now, more than I thought I was signing up for. So then you have to get back to those core principles. Like, what was it that was motivating you in the first place? So I think before we kind of explore further, like I know for you, you had, again, vaguely heard of this idea going to the US, but what really maybe spurned you more was us coming in January, right? And like spending some time together and things. So at that time, try and take yourself back to that mindset where it seemed like the right thing to do for you. Like, what was it at that point that convinced you, and what's changed between now and then apart from the exams being hard?
Oh, interesting. Okay. So I think what convinced me at the time was mostly the adventurousness of it. Just like the idea of packing up and moving to a new country to start a new life, to work in medicine because medicine is fun, but to do it in a new kind of way. And that seemed very kind of like fresh and exciting. I was like, oh, this is something that I could kind of get on board with. I think at the time when you guys came over in January this year, I'd sort of been, I wasn't really sure where I was going on the medicine front, and I'd been kind of thinking to myself, well, this YouTube thing is going well. Most of my kind of passions are in the field of like online business and stuff, rather than I don't really have much of a pre-existing kind of big passion with a big P for medicine. And so I was really trying to figure out kind of, what do I want to do? Do I want to do part-time training in the UK? Do I want to kind of go abroad? Do I want to go to the US? Like what are the different options? And I think when I saw you and Shireen, it was like, oh, these guys are doing something cool and exciting and fresh and adventurous, which is the sort of thing that I would want to do with my life. And I think what's changed is that I think at the time I had a real case of, right, how hard can this be? I want an adventure. This seems like a good way to acquire said adventure. Therefore, I will take the Yosemite step 1, step 2, step et cetera, and move to America. Then when I saw how much of a ball ache the exams actually are and how much of a large time commitment it would be, I started to think, okay, well, what are my actual reasons for going to America? And I was thinking that the main reason I wanted to go was because of adventure, to have an adventure and to meet new people. And I kind of mentioned this to my brother, and he was like, well, I'm pretty sure there are far more efficient ways for you to have an adventure and meet more people than to spend a year preparing for these multiple exams. And I kind of thought, that's a good point. And so I'd be spending a year preparing for these exams. I'd be going through the various hoops of, trying to basically sell myself to these various residency programs, being like, hey guys, I'm legit, pick me over these other medics. all in exchange for then a 3 to 4 year grueling residency program where a lot of EM residents had
Further ball ache.
yeah,
On top
further
of
ball ache on top of that, all for the case of all for the end goal of becoming an attending and earning loads of money. But that was never the point. The point was the adventure.
Yeah.
It's just I don't really know what I want, and so like yeah.
So here's the thing. I remember at that time back then, when you were considering your alternative, you were like the same way when I had talked about my journey, when I said I could see the path in front of me. Like I would stay in training here, I'd become a consultant here, I'd have kids here who'd go to grammar schools and who'd go off and become doctors or go to university, etc., top class universities. And for me, the monotony of that cycle was too much, and I had to break free and go do something else. Right now, and at that time, your alternative, that stable path, was you would go through your training here at anesthesia, I think it was, and then you would become an attending, and the part-time you teach, or like be kind of part-time academic professor, etc. And that was kind of your alternative that you had in front of you, and you do your YouTube on the side. Has anything changed for you in terms of that alternative? Like, has the alternative become now my adventure would be going to another country as a content creator and having fun with that, as opposed to ever going back to medicine? Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to figure out what is your now alternative scenario.
Good point. So my now alternative scenario is that while this YouTube thing is going well, what I could do is travel the world for a few years. I like the idea of doing a stint of emergency medicine in the UK initially to get my skills up, to get some experience in it, then heading over to Australia to do some emergency medicine there, and then figuring out what I want to do from there. So either consider staying in Australia if I like it, moving back to the UK if I don't like it, or potentially even doing something rogue like working on a cruise ship for a year or two, or that sort of stuff. Ultimately optimizing for a future where I would want to work part-time, probably in emergency medicine, and kind of dabble with the humanitarian, like Doctors Without Borders type stuff. But yeah, the short-term alternative plan is not the kind of part-time training program in the UK. It's more like travel the world, enjoy unemployment, and then do some stuff in Australia and to kind of take things from there.
I feel like a lot of the hidden motivations behind this like change of heart has been you realizing how fun unemployed life has been for you.
Oh my god, it's incredible.
Last couple of months.
It's just so good.
As a brief aside, what have you been doing more with your free time now that you're unemployed?
So the thing is, I actually don't have much free time, which is the weird thing.
Because the content stuff, right?
Because the content stuff, yeah, exactly. And so I was making a projects list the other day. Where did my things go? To figure out what I want to do. And there's just so much to be done in the realm of more videos, more courses, writing a book, writing a second book, taking part in various, mostly around the content, and figuring out ways to expand and diversify and kind of get new lines of revenue and stuff. And that combined with, I think I can count on one hand the amount of times I've had a meal on my own in this last month. Because there's always kind of friends around, or I can go to someone's place for dinner or invite people over. But it's only been a month into unemployment, and so I feel like I'm still probably in the honeymoon phase where I still feel like I have all these things that I want to be doing, and I haven't once thought about I kind of miss the medicine thing. Have you have you had significant periods of unemployment?
No, never actually. I mean, I
went no gaps on your CV.
No, I graduated from medical school, went straight to New York for my postdoc for like 6 months, and while I was applying for residency, then straight into intern year. So I basically just been nonstop kind of on the treadmill. But like now that I'm in dermatology, I consider it a semi-break in employment because of how nice the schedule is. But this is the closest I've had to that for a while. But I mean, the thing, because this is what it comes down to me, is in terms of like advising you is very different to advising the typical medical student / doctor from the UK, right? Because like for that person, it's pretty clear that medicine is the central part of their life. Typically, it is their main source of income. It is like the thing that they will be devoting most of the hours of their life to, one way or another. So then at that point, the pitch is much easier, because you say, okay, listen, you're going to be committing less time in a concentrated period of training years, where they focus in on the parts that are actually making you a more skilled physician rather than a skilled phlebotomist or a skilled catheter placer, etc. So come over here to the US, get the best training in the world, obviously a biased perspective, but in my opinion, in terms of getting specialized training, best in the world, you'll be done in 3 or 4 years, you'll be a consultant, and then go part-time. There's countless numbers of ED physicians here who do 2 shifts a week, or do locum work, basically. They just don't work for stretches of time, then they come back and take a couple of locum shifts at like rates that would make our locum rates in England look like nothing, and we get giddy over our locum rates in England. We're like, oh my god, you'll never believe I'm
50 quid an hour.
Exactly. I negotiated for like 6 months to get this amazing deal, and obviously that is great proportionate to what you can normally get, but here in the US, again, that is also proportionately increased. So you could very well just do your 3 years of training and then go off and do this kind of like shift work. So again, that's much easier for someone who's like, yeah, I'm going to be a doctor, this is my career kind of thing. When your alternative is, oh, I could be doing a flood of different passive income based, like high level thinking, creative projects that then culminate in like me doing something else I enjoy, which is making videos and posting content. And like that is my alternative versus studying for the USMLE and going to the US. It's obviously a very different scenario to be comparing it to.
Yeah.
So what it comes down to is like how big a role do you see medicine playing in your long-term future? Like if you told me that no matter what, under no circumstances, is medicine ever going to be something which takes up more than like, 20% of your time? Because it's always going to be like a part-time thing that you dip in and out of. And that's like very much your like clear-minded perspective on it right now. Then I'd say I can see why it's tough to get that motivation to be built up again to go to the US, just because you're going to have a difficult on and off 2 years at least. I mean, again, difficult in inverted commas, because like, again, if I can come over and match into dermatology in the US, coming over and matching into emergency medicine is not going to be impossible for you. It's going to be a very manageable task for you to be able to do, especially someone who's naturally book smart, going to take exams, etc. You're going to have a pretty easy time of actually matching into a program somewhere. It's more just it will require comparatively boring work. Like studying for the exam is never going to be as fun as meeting like these famous YouTubers and having the collabs with them, etc. Like it just won't be, right? So if you told me, again, medicine is not going to be a big part of my life, do I think it's worth you going through all this trouble having to prove yourself? Because you are going to have to prove yourself in another country. Whereas now in your world of like content creation and things
in my little village
there,
that I've got
right?
for myself.
Like,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you're there. You're established. You got your million plaque the other day.
I'm like a big name now.
That's it now. Exactly. You're done. You've got the million plaque on the wall. Like no problem. That's why you're having a dinner alone, Ellie, because it's been you and your million plaque just sitting there.
Yeah.
Every day.
Crying, wiping my tears away.
Exactly. So it's a harder pitch. So I guess that kind of back towards you. How much do you ever see medicine playing a role in your future?
Probably quite minimal. I think 20% is round about the mark where right now I'm thinking that would be cool. I'm kind of thinking between 20 and 50% with the sort of, but potentially 0 to 50%. I can't really see a future where it's going to be much higher than 50%, at least not for an extended period of time. But that's kind of just trying to predict the future, and it's hard to predict the future. But I do like medicine, and I do like the idea of doing it part-time, but very much as kind of one of the 5 other things that I'm doing, as opposed to my main hustle, as it were. And then in terms of the moving to US part, like I know you talked about how like some people kind of gave you cautionary tales, like be careful, there's physician burnout, etc. in the US. And I think like naturally it's not like it's not an easy job to be a doctor right here in the US. I know if anyone sees the course, I say it's easy compared to the UK, which I stand by. It is definitely easy compared to the UK. But no matter what line of work you're in, people are going to feel burnt out just because there's external pressures and you're doing like high acuity things, right? So part and parcel of being a doctor is that like you check out at the end of your shift at whatever 5:36, and on your head is that list of patients that you are taking care of, and you're wondering like, oh, I wonder if that guy's CT is going to come back showing a bleed, and like, was he looking fine? Was he looking a bit off? I'm not sure. Is that me imagining things? Like that's going to be on your head. So as a physician, a degree of burnout is going to exist in your career, as opposed to someone who's making YouTube videos. Although I'm sure that has its own burnout, but like it has its own stresses, right? So yes, I'm not like delegitimizing people's feelings as US physicians, but just to kind of put a story out there as an example of how kind of things become a new normal for you, right? So like here in the US, I've mentioned before how like an internal medicine team normally has a cap, like each intern has a cap of like 10 patients. So I would be with my co-intern, and they would get the 10th patient on their list, and they would be like having a terrible day, being like, I got capped today. I got capped. Like, you'll never believe it. It's so annoying. I got capped. I actually have 10 patients. And I'd be kind of sitting there looking over at them like, 10 patients? Like, you want me to feel sorry for you for the fact that you've got 10 patients? When I know in England, we had like 30 patients each on a ward kind of thing. So like, yes, naturally there's going to be a degree of physician burnout because of the pressure of the job, but the actual job you do is much less prone to causing burnout as compared to the UK. And US physicians don't have that point of comparison, right? They can't say like, oh, we know we have it worse than you guys over there, so like you might have heard it's better here, but it's not. But they don't necessarily have that insight. And I've seen the way it works in both, and I think the type of work you have to do in the US is much more like medicine focused. Like you will be having high level discussions with your consultant from like week 1 about like what should be the next investigation. You'll be sitting there like looking up guidelines together. Like that's the type of work you're busy doing here in the US. Whereas in England, you're busy doing like 8 blood draws because the phlebotomist said they were a hard stick, because yesterday's phlebotomist told them that patient was a hard stick, so they didn't even try because it's just impossible now. Like
I just think the type of work you're going to be doing is different. So that's one thing I will say is, yes, physician burnout is real, but it's usually 3 years of residency programs rather than 10, which is much more prone to causing burnout. The work is much more actual medicine focused rather than like, scut work. And the other thing is just that like the safety caps in place means that you're generally less overworked than you are in England. So that's kind of like the counterpoint to that is what I would say.
Okay. Yeah, because I guess when people talk about residency life in the US, they focus on the number of hours worked. And like I was interviewed on some like physician podcast, which was two American anesthesiologists. And when I said that, they were like, how do you find time to do all this stuff as a junior doctor? And I was like, well, I only work 46 hours a week on average. And they were laughing. They were like, oh, wow, 80 to 100 is standard for like residents. But I guess you're saying that even though the hours are long, the type of work is much more medical/education focused rather than admin and phlebotomy focused.
And also those hours, for example, right, like those 80 to 100 hours, maybe if you're doing general surgery or vascular surgery, orthopedic surgery, yeah, they do work very long hours, and usually they'll have like 36-hour calls and 48-hour calls and things like that. If emergency medicine is like your new squeeze, I feel like every time I meet you, there's something else.
Yeah, another new squeeze.
Yeah. So right now, if it's emergency medicine, it's a hot new thing. Right, Shireen is actually on her emergency medicine rotation right now as part of internal medicine. They like you spend a month in the emergency department. So the shifts they have is they work typically either 4 to 5 shifts in the week, and they have 12-hour shifts.
Okay.
And that's it. So like, for example, in a regular week, you'll have like 2 to 3 days off, and you'll work in 12-hour shifts. And there's not really any scope for that carrying over because the new team comes in and there's not really much in terms of like long-term following or I have to follow my patient because it's just a handoff process, right? At 7. So it's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., either 4 or 5 shifts a week. So that purely by maths, it does not equal to 80 to 100 hours. It equals 60 hours, right? Or if you're lucky on a certain week, you get 50 hours. So it's very manageable. I mean, again, I'm not talking just as a dermatology resident here. Obviously, we have like more comfortable hours. I'm talking in terms of the friends I have who are in medicine, who are in ophthalmology, who are in things like that. They really are not this like Grey's Anatomy version of the world that you see where like it's crazy and you're sleeping in the hospital for weeks at a time. Like that's not the real world. That's more like a dramatized version of things. In fact, there's actually like very specific duty hours violations that you can't cross. Like you can't work more than X number of days in a row and you can't work beyond this number of hours. Like it's really regulated. So I think there's also a bit of bravado that comes with it, like especially because some people like you always want to talk up what you're doing, right? So if someone told me like, "Oh, how was your intern?" Yeah, I'll be like, "Mate, you guys don't even know." Like in England,
half
you
the
guys
time. My God,
exactly. You'll never believe it. My list was full. They don't know full means like 10, but like it was overflowing.
Yeah.
So yeah, the work is not overburdensome, especially in emergency medicine, which hospital. The amount of brunches we have, lay evidence to that fact that there's just like you do have plenty of time to balance your work life. The other thing that you talked about in terms of the visa restrictions, right, and in terms of being able to like work in other capacities and things like that, that's an interesting one, and that is true in certain visa categories that you get that are more typical for other people. But from your perspective, if I were you, I would consider trying to get an investor visa. Which is something which like I'm not going to claim to know your financial situation, but if you can, it's a pretty big amount of money, but if you can invest around about $500,000 in terms of dollar terms into businesses in the US, right, between now and whatever it is in 2 or 3 years time, you get an investor visa, which is basically has almost no restrictions on it. And it leads to an investor green card. And that is your pathway towards having a green card in the US without having any employment restrictions, anything. So it's one of these like alternative routes for people who like boost the US economy because they come invest in US businesses. And it's not like you lose that money, like you literally become a shareholder in whatever investment you put in, and that pays its own dividends to you. But that's an option for a lot of people who have like liquidity to consider coming in and having no restrictions on their work. So you could come over on an investor visa, but also do residency because the residency has no restrictions on how you come into the country. Like you can come in with whatever you have. And as long as the immigration team at the hospital like know that means you have a legal right to work, by all means, come into the residency program. So that's something which you could consider, which would stop you being restricted for 3 years, because that will be a hassle for you. If you have to like be restricted, or at least in the US terms, and then in all your UK-based businesses, you would then like, whatever you're doing from the UK in your company terms, you'd be allowed to maintain because it's in like it's back in the UK. But if you were starting new ventures in the US, etc., there would be a lot of restrictions on what you could do. So you can't be an employee alongside like an H-1B visa of another company, but you can own shares in a company and you can be like an investor in a company. So there's
Okay,
ways that you
there's
can
ways
even
around
make
it.
it work if you're on H1B visa. Exactly, yeah.
Oh,
So
interesting.
we'll talk off the record when the
Yeah,
immigration team are
yeah. Of course, we probably shouldn't do that on a live stream. Yeah, I've got a
yeah.
call. I've actually got a call with a lawyer later this week
uh
about trying to apply for an O1 visa as well.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah,
Yeah, potentially making a case that I'm a extraordinary alien in certain capacities. And
yeah, yeah.
um,
You are an extraordinary alien. I think that's been one thing consistent about you for years. Um, but yeah, that's another option. So again, my brother's doing a very similar thing. So he came over initially on a J1. He's a journalist right now. Actually, I don't know
oh,
if you
yeah,
listen to podcasts, right? So you know This American Life,
yeah.
like Serial. So he's a journalist now with Serial. So he'll actually be the voice of Serial season 4, FYI. I was just flagging that up there. So I'll let you know once that drops. So he came over on like a J1 as well. Now they're looking into applying for an O1 for him once he gets his credits, and then again path to green card. Me, I came over on H1, but very early after I came over and I realized what was available, I applied for an outstanding alien green card application through like an EB2, called a national interest waiver, and I now actually have been approved for my green card. So
Oh,
I also
congrats.
have no restrictions on my employment anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you plan ahead enough, you can easily make these things work for you. And it's not a case that you'll have to like give up everything for 3 years and focus
Ah.
just on EM and like have a boring life in the hospital for 4 years. So just as counterpoints, this
Yeah.
isn't to say like it's definitely the right thing
No,
for
of
you, but
course.
I just want to make sure you have all the knowledge.
No, absolutely. That sounds good. We've got a couple of questions here from the chat. Someone's Brojesh says, having worked at both St. Thomas's and reputable hospitals in New York, how do you compare the stress, the work-life balance, and other factors?
So again, in terms of St. Thomas's, I didn't actually start my job at St. Thomas's. So I worked in the Imperial hospitals like St. Mary's, Chelsea and Westminster, etc. But in terms of St. Thomas's, that's where I had my AFP, my academic foundation program offer was from there. But I rejected that before I started it. So it's like a power move. I feel like I had to say that.
Yeah, yeah,
To the
nice one.
King's
That's
Hospital.
good. It's
It's a
good
power
flex.
move.
Yeah, solid.
So in terms of the work-life balance, I would say that during training years, and the reason why that's important is because training years means very different things depending on where you are. So during training years, the UK doctors start later in the day. So in the US, starting at 7 a.m. is typical. 7 a.m. is like normal. Whereas in England, if you ever started a rotation at 7 a.m., you would tell the world about it. You would tell your family, you'd have like sympathy, everything.
Yeah.
But 7 a.m. is normal in America. So you definitely start earlier. Earliest you'll start in England, typically 8:30 on like some surgical rotations or something. And otherwise it's like 9. And then in terms of finishing times, they're pretty reliable. So I'm talking internal medicine, which is the most common for IMGs to do, or even if EM. It's fairly typical to end at like 5, reliably at 5. And they have like safety mechanisms in place. For example, like you can't get new admissions for the last hour of your shift. So if your day ends at 5, you can't get a new admission at 4:59, so that you're actually there till 6. So it fairly reliably ends at 5. And then the weekends, you work more weekends in America during residency training than you do in England. In England, you might work 1 weekend a month, like typically, whereas in America, you might only be completely off for 1 weekend in a month. And the other weekends, you'll be working one day, not working the other day, for example. In EM, it's different because they don't do it based on weeks. They do it based on just shifts, like shift numbers. You just do 12-hour shifts throughout the week. Your weekend could be Tuesday, Wednesday. It could be Saturday, Sunday. Like that's how it works for them. But broadly speaking, I would say that their residency hours are longer in the US. But then the counterpoint is, again, it finishes after 3 years, typically. Internal medicine is a 3-year residency program in England, after which point you are a consultant hospitalist and you're board certified in internal medicine in the US, and that's it, you're done. Whereas in England, after 3 years, you'll be a CMT, core medical trainee, like 1, basically, right? That's still at the very beginning of the ladder. So in that sense, I think that the US hours are longer, but the certainty you have with like once you match into residency program in the US, you don't have to worry about anything. Like you don't have to worry about like portfolios, you don't have to worry about audits, you don't have to worry about all this kind of stuff, because like you're not getting assessed every year and reapplying further like you are in England. Like in England, it's like F1, F2, then you reapply for core medical, then you reapply for specialty training, then you worry about consultant jobs like, oh my God, there's a bottleneck, I need to go do a PhD so I can get a consultant job. Oh my God, I have to make sure I'm very well published so that when I get a consultant job, like I can fight the 10 other people who want it. Whereas in America, it's like once you've matched into residency training, like you can reliably put your hat on it saying like, I will have a consultant job in 3 years, even if I do nothing but go to my job and come back. So you don't have to do those extra things unless you want to be like an academic center in the future, or you want to do a really competitive fellowship, then fine. But you have that security. Like for example, for me, since I matched into dermatology residency, well, the first year doctors came up to me being like, oh, it's a really interesting case. Like, do you want to write this up? I'm like, no, I don't want to write it up. like zero interest in writing
I'm not about
applications
that life
because
anymore. Yeah.
exactly, I don't need to worry about that anymore. So my peace of mind in terms of like when I'm home, I don't need to worry about like what my next hustle is in terms of like how am I going to make it to the next landmark in England. So so yeah, work hours are longer in the US, but shorter overall duration of training, less like BS tasks during your day, and the day itself isn't as manic. In England, the days are manic. Like you may get there at 9 and leave at 5, but like you don't sit down typically a lot of the time when you're there. Like pre-corona, when everything kind of calmed down with other things coming in, typically they're pretty busy days in England. They'll have like a long list of tasks to do. Whereas in America, there's very much like it's more leisurely. Like you have an hour of teaching, and then you go and have another hour of teaching, and then you come back. So it's a pretty pleasant day comparatively.
Okay. Awesome. We've got a question from Rio who says, any suggestions for final year medics looking for electives, especially given COVID? Lots of US programs are not taking external medical students these days.
Yes, absolutely. So it's going to be it's a huge hassle, and that's something which in our course and through Liberty Medics, I've been reaching out to program directors to interview them and to like put some of these questions to them. So so far we sat down with a bunch of different PDs, like one from Mount Sinai, one from Harvard, and those are like top 5 IM programs in the country. And I spoke to them about this exact same thing alongside other questions. And one of the things I asked them is, for people applying at least in these upcoming cycles or whose only window for electives is right now during COVID when it's cancelled, like what are they supposed to do? And what they both said was, listen, normally programs have like minimum US clinical experience that's required. Like you must have had 1 month of US clinical experience or 2 months to be able to be eligible for selection. But he's like, naturally, we're not insane. Like in light of COVID, we know that's not possible. So we're going to have to be more flexible with our requirements. So the truth is that if your only opportunity to get a clinical hands-on elective was either this last spring or summer that passed or next spring where they still might not let people back in, then you're going to just explain that on your application, make it clear to them that it wasn't possible for you, and they will take that into account because it's not just you guys. What they pointed out to me, which I kind of forgot, was that even a lot of US medical grads, they do away rotations at other institutions throughout the year to try and make themselves known to other departments. And he was like, yeah, they can't do it either. It's not like within the US people are traveling and internationally there aren't. Even within states, people aren't traveling. So there's been like a amnesty basically across this last spring and summer, and next year it's like, okay, you just won't have it. Now the options are, if you miss your window, and to explain to people what we mean by the window, you can only do a hands-on clinical elective in the US if you're still a medical student. Because of various like medical indemnity rules, you can't be a doctor from another country, come over to the US, be hands-on with a patient without having like approved like certification and things. So but a medical student is allowed because they're a student. So if you've graduated and missed that window where you could have had a hands-on clinical elective, there are options of things called observerships, where you apply to go and do a non-hands-on elective in the US. But what that still allows you to do is to round with the team, sit and have discussions with the team, interact with the residents and with the attendings, be proactive, get involved in research, and basically just do everything that like a very enthusiastic medical student would do apart from actually clerking the patient or examining the patient. And even though, especially in regular hierarchies, observerships aren't seen as kind of advantageous to you as a clinical elective, in light of COVID, it's the best you can do, and it will still show that you've got that commitment, that enthusiasm, and it'll make you well known amongst the department so that when you do apply, they will give you an interview. And when you go to the interview, you can show them that you have commitment to that program by being like, I wasn't able to do my elective here, but I did come afterwards and do an observership because I really wanted to see how things worked in the US to make sure that I could embed myself from day one as a resident without having any kind of, learning curve. And that's how you pitch it, basically. And if you pitch it like that, you'll be fine. And the observerships are cheaper as well, so you may actually work out in your favor, because observerships are like a couple $100, whereas electives are a couple $1,000. So I think the option for those people is know that you're going to be given a bit more like slack than other people would have. Try and get observerships once you've graduated from medical school and once things normalize, because Trump says we're getting a vaccine here in like 2 months. So things will be back to normal at some point, probably next year. Either that or we'll all have some kind of weird cancer from the vaccine he injects us with. We'll see. Fingers crossed a real vaccine comes soon enough next year and things start to normalize by next summer, which I anticipate they will. So anyone apart from that, do still try to get a clinical elective from next summer onwards when things reopen. But between now and then, that would be my advice. And I don't think you should consider that like a death sentence to your application. Like it definitely isn't going to be.
Okay, awesome. And another question from the chat, which is, I'm a second-year medical student. Is it too soon to be thinking about moving to the US?
So what I would tell people is that there's no such thing as too soon, in that whatever you can do early on in your medical school, if you know what you're working towards, it's going to make your life easier later on. So for someone like me, I toyed with it in third year, as I said, but I only got really serious about it in like fifth year, like second last year of university for me. And that meant that like my entire timeline of everything got crunched into like a very unhealthy period of 12 months where I had to do every step exam alongside my finals, alongside AFP applications, alongside SJT and FPAS and everything. So it's a bit of a nightmare, basically, like crushing that all together. And if you know that's very clearly what you want to do, amazing. You have like a huge head start, because from your second year, you can already start thinking like, can I actually get serious about a particular specialty? Because that's the other huge disadvantage is in England, almost no one knows with certainty what specialty they're going to do by their last year of medical school. Like you're very much in early mode where you have a new squeeze every month where you go on different hives to different
That's
things.
the one.
But then when you're applying for residency programs in the US, you're competing against US students who are like grad students. And you all remember grad students from med school. They have like a different mentality. They're like adults. You would stand next to a grad student and you'd be like, are you like a different species than me? Like they just were built different. So they're much more serious. The US students, they know what specialty they want to do, typically from first year of their medical school. And they will optimize themselves publication-wise, like elective-wise, everything to that specialty. So if you have a clear idea of what you want to do early on, then yeah, give yourself that advantage. Think seriously about what you want to do in terms of specialty and start optimizing yourself for that. Start working on your publications and start making connections in the US. So even though you're hands-on clinical elective, your medical school might only give you enough time in like your fifth year or something to do that. You can still go and do research electives at institutions in the summers ahead of time, which I know some people who have done, who, for example, they went from like their second, third year, fourth year, they went to the same place on research electives every summer. So by the time they were going on their clinical elective and applying, like they were part of the furniture. Like everyone knew who they were. They were like one of the family, like, and they like walk right into residency because it was so easy for them because they were well known amongst the faculty. So yeah, it can be a huge advantage for you. And I mean, that's part of the reason why, again, a little plug for the course. So our course, we made it so it's like unlimited. Like we don't want it to be that you have to like game yourself. Like, do I buy the subscription now because I'm really serious now, or I don't want to do it now and then it expires and I have to pay again? Like for us, it's like once you subscribe, that's it. You have like lifelong access, because some people will start it as early as first year of medical school. Some people will decide that when they've been a consultant in England for 10 years, they want to do it. So for us, it's very much a mentality of like start when you want to start and like benefit from each part of the course when you're interested, and plan your own journey. But having that head start is always useful, I think.
Amazing. And on a related note, we've got a question. I'm a second year medic in the UK. When should I take the USMLE? Before, pass, fail? Mm-hmm. I feel like I don't have enough advanced knowledge post A-level or even time. Help.
Yeah. So for a bit of context for other people, the USMLE Step 1 right now, which is traditionally seen as the most important aspect of your application, typically, especially for an IMG, is currently scored using like a 3-digit numerical scoring system. And from that, like the average score is about a 230, and like a good score is like, say, above a 250, and that's kind of, and a pass score is 190, which like, isn't an achievement. 190 isn't something you'd be like, yes, I passed the Step 1. Like that would be a bad score. So that's currently how it exists. But from January 2022, they're changing the USMLE Step 1 into just a pass-fail scoring system. So you will no longer get a digit scoring. You will just be told pass-fail. Now, the reason behind that change was they thought that a lot of the US students were getting too stressed out about the Step 1 because it was such a big exam, and they were just getting themselves too worked up, getting stress, anxiety, etc. So that's why they're changing it. Now, you might think like, oh, great, that means like, I can just have to pass. Like, I don't have to do really well because either way it's a pass. But as an IMG, I think it's actually a pretty big disadvantage for you, especially if you're someone who isn't from like a very famous medical school, or if you're someone who wanted to go for a really prestigious program or a really good, a really competitive specialty. You needed that Step 1 really as an IMG to make yourself stand out. So for myself, I can say categorically, if I didn't have the Step 1 score I did, which is like a 262, which is a good score, I would not have dermatology residency right now, because that was always the thing that got my foot through the door. Like while program directors and people were trying to let me down easy and tell me why IMGs couldn't get dermatology, they would always pause when I would mention my score, and then they'd be like, okay, like, well, why don't you come work with, like, that would be the reason why they changed their, like, polite decline. So I would have lost that opportunity. So if you're sitting there now as a medical student and you're in that position where, like, you want to go for a top tier program or you want to try and get a competitive specialty, I would implore you to try to do your Step 1 before January 2022. Now, traditionally, I tell people the best time to start doing your USMLE Step 1 is after you've had 1 clinical year at medical school. So that typically means that you finish your 3rd year, and then you can start like working on your Step 1 prep timetable, etc. Whether that's your BSc year and it might be a bit more chill, or whether that's your regular medical school and you're just more disciplined and organized, etc. So I would tell people start studying at the beginning of your 4th year or after your 3rd year. But if you're in that position where that timeline will mean that you miss the January 2022 deadline, then you have to think to yourself, like, okay, do I have the commitment and the time right now to make up for the fact that I won't have had that one clinical year, which often does help contextualize questions in your USMLE Step 1 exam, even if it's a basic sciences exam. Do I have enough time to overcome that obstacle? Is it doable? Absolutely. Like if you follow the resources, like we have study timelines, recommended resources, how to get the best out of them through Liberty Medics, but also other places online, you can find resources, etc. You can definitely overcome that gap, but it's just over to you. Like, are you traditionally a good test taker? Do you have the time in your current schedule to invest in it and to make this work for you? If so, yes, 100% do it before January 2022. If you're going to try and rush it and like fumble it and end up getting a 195, for you, it would have been better to wait for it to be pass fail, because then, it's that ambiguity, right? Like you could come across as a pretty impressive guy, like, oh, I'm a Cambridge grad, like, I probably would have got a 250, wink, wink, but I just got a pass, that kind of thing. Maybe it could work in your favor, but on the whole, I think that's my advice about it. And I think it's something which a lot of people have to think about, because January 2022 sounds like a really long way away, but it will come like that. Like it's just over a year and a half from now. And the typical study time we recommend for people for their Step 1 is at least 6 months of like committed time if you want to get a top tier score. So start thinking about that now.
Okay, and kind of on that note, so this is something that I was thinking about. Like, I think I've probably ruled out doing the Step 1 kind of this coming year pre-pass fail, because as you said, I want to optimize for a decent score, which would require putting large amounts of time and effort into it, which I currently do not absolutely have the motivation to do. But I was thinking, if you were to kind of advise me, if I were to do it post January 2022, what else would kind of be the obstacles along the way, other than doing the exam? Because presumably it's fairly easy to pass the USMLE Step 1. Are there other exams like Step 2 CK, Step 2 CS? Like how does it work, and with the other hoops you have to jump through?
Yeah. So even though this one has switched to pass fail with the USMLE Step 1, the Step 2 CK, which is the more clinical based exam, that is still a numeric score. It's a 3-digit numeric score. And if you ask me, if you get rid of the numeric score for one, you just increase the numeric score importance for the other one. So all that's going to do is kind of just shift the stress for people onto the CK and make that the one that's kind of overwhelmingly more important. So I don't think you can get away from the fact that, at some point you're going to feel like you have to justify yourself by getting an amazing score in something just to show them that, like, I'm a smart guy. The Step 2 CK is less soul destroying to prepare for because it's clinical medicine. So even as you're studying it, it's much easier to be like, oh, okay, this is quite fun. Like, I'm this patient comes to the door, let me think things through. Like, it keeps me sharp, fine. Step 1 is more soul destroying because you can't see it applied until like much kind of later down the line. But the Step 2 CK will definitely become more important, so you're gonna have to study more for that. The other things that are gonna come more kind of sharply into focus are gonna be your publications. So again, if you ask me, it's more stressful as a medical student, especially from like places who, if you're not very well networked or you're not at a very prestigious institution, you're now gonna feel that burden to go off there and get more publications, because there's a very few other things they can see. They can see your scores for your exams, your publications, your personal statement, and your letters of recommendation. That's basically what they can see, alongside your volunteer activities, et cetera, and your medical school transcripts. So your medical school transcripts are going to be more important now, because that's going to be your surrogate for are you a smart person or not, because they don't have their Step 1. Your Step 2 CK is going to be more important. Your publications are going to be more important in terms of making yourself seem academic. And then finally, it's going to be about those letters of recommendation. So then the US clinical experience aspect / the observership aspect becomes even more important, because they're going to be like scampering for information to reassure them that you're someone who's like good and talented. So when they see someone from like one of their US colleagues saying that, they trust that way more. So yeah, that's going to bring that into more importance as well. So for you, I am still on the perspective of someone with your baseline capacity to take exams, you should be able to take it before it switches to pass fail. That's my opinion, because you have plenty of time, right? 12 months means that you can like dilute out the work you would have needed to do in 6 months even more. I did it in 3 months, and I don't think I'm smarter than you. So if I did it in 3 months times by 4x, like dilution, like what level of intensity you need to work at, you can absolutely do that. So for me, I would say that it's more like make it non-negotiable, right? Like we always talk about this, like make it non-negotiable. If you make it non-negotiable, like I am taking this test by hook or by crook, December 1st, 2021. I don't care what else happens. Like I'll either embarrass myself and just get like a pass score, or I'll do myself justice and get a good score. That is one thing that's like locked down in my head. Like the same way if you were doing like a collab with Marquise Brownlee or something, you'd be like, okay, that's in my head. Like that is happening. One way or another, that is happening. So like, if I was you, I would still try and do that. If, again, this US thing is something you're seriously considering. But for someone else who like thinks that they need more time that they just physically do not have, it's fair if you decide that, okay, I'm going to wait this out. I'm going to get just my pass score, and I'm only applying for like internal medicine, not like, I'm not trying to go do plastic surgery, orthopedic surgery, or dermatology. Then fine. Then it makes sense to wait, but then just know what we just talked about. Those other things are going to take on increased importance, and there's no way your application is going to be easy. There's no way this will be easy. You will have to prove yourself to someone from another country one way or another. So whether you want to be writing manuscripts or whether you want to be like trying to impress extra and more electives or observerships, is that easier than just studying a bit harder for your step one? I don't think so. I think it's easier to just have the one exam in front of your head to be like, whatever, these are my resources, this is my canvas, I will paint it with my score, and then I will move on, and like, that's my perspective, but each their own, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay. How's your YouTube channel going? Just on a completely side note.
Oh no, yeah. It's basically I did a couple of videos just as a as a practice for like, can I edit videos using Ali Skillshare, and they came out well. But since then I haven't like actually started publicizing it or doing more videos regularly. But I hope to. I'm still caught on like what I'm gonna make most of it. Like, am I gonna still do the skin stuff? Right now it's like at Real Skin Doctor. It's like specifically about just like dermatology and kind of like myth busting about dermatology, etc. So I don't know whether I'm gonna focus as much on that moving forwards, or if I'm gonna transition into like education, like medical education kind of things, not like study videos, but I mean like making the transition to the US stuff. So it's on pause, let's just say, Ali. It's been on pause right now, but I'm waiting for my plaque. YouTube hasn't sent me my 100 subscribers plaque yet. I think they must have my old address.
It must have got lost in the mail or something like that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll just give them a message, Ali. You know them.
I will do. I'll try and pull some strings.
Yeah, but wait, Ali, I wanted to ask you a question actually. So in terms of this US kind of this like adventure thing, right? So was being a doctor in the US in your head part of that adventure? Like, was part of the adventure like, oh, I get to see medical training in another, or like a country, or I get to be like board certified in another country and I get to like see what it's like there? Like, was that part of the adventure for you, or was that just like a vehicle for the rest of the adventure, if you know what I mean?
It was very much a vehicle for the rest of the adventure. And when you put it like that, I hadn't really thought of it in those terms, because for example, I was toying with the idea of like doing a master's of medical education for 2 years, purely as a vehicle for the adventure, because I, probably shouldn't say this on the record, but I don't think I care much about the degree itself. But it would have been a good vehicle to go to America, and so this is partly why I've got this call with this lawyer this week, to try and explore other vehicles for going to America, at least temporarily, to have a bit of an adventure. I thought it would be cool to be one of those like, rent out an RV and then just kind of drive across the country doing collabs with different YouTubers along the way, as a generally kind of fun sort of vibe. But the medicine thing for me was very incidental to that dream. But I think the problem that I have now is that the more I move away from this medicine thing, the more it feels like, I don't know, I'm kind of casting away this identity that I have kind of internally built up for myself over the last, like, since the age of 16, basically. And it feels weird. So I don't know. I think part of me is thinking, well, I could. There's no rush to be a consultant. I can do the adventure thing. I can go to Australia for a bit, and I can always dabble in emergency medicine here and there, and then I can hop into a residency program as and when I need to, either in the UK or potentially US, potentially other places. But another part of me is kind of thinking, well, do I want to leave it all together? And another part of me is kind of thinking, well, it's good to keep the options open. And if I get to the point where I do end up leaving it all together, it'll be because I found something else that I love to do. And I shouldn't necessarily hold on to this identity that I happened to pick when I was 16. Yeah,
because right now it's like, oh, I'm Ali Abdal, I'm a doctor and YouTuber, right? That's like the thing.
This is the thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's like also it gives that like extra veil of like not veil, but it's like the legitimacy of like, like
a badge of credibility.
Exactly. Not to say YouTube isn't credible, etc., but just to be like I'm really good at this, but FYI, I'm a doctor. Like here I am, I'm doing my shift, like I'm coming home my scrubs, and now I'm doing this. So it's like you can't attack me from any angle. Like, it's like, oh, why don't you do something worthwhile with your life? Oh, you mean saving lives? It's it gives you that kind of like full package kind of sense of it, but not to say that's a good reason for doing it, but just that like I don't know, like I always thought when you were saying like, oh, go to the US, like, it'll be fun, it'll be part of the adventure. Like for me, going to the US being part of the adventure, yeah, it was also everything else. But for me, a big part of it was also like, oh, I'll get to be a doctor there in America. Like, I wonder what that's like. I've seen it so much on TV and the movies. Like, I've seen all the training there. I've heard so much about it. Like, what is it like to be a doctor there? Like, what is their training like? What are the patients like? Like, the one thing I'll say is that medicine, unlike almost any other profession you're in, is such an amazing vehicle for like getting to know a place, because you go there and like say you're in a new city from like week one, you don't really know that much about the place, but you go there and each patient you see come in is like a little jigsaw piece of like what life is like in this new place, right?
Yeah.
And you get it from like a million different angles, because these patients come in. One guy will be like a homeless person who sleeps in Penn Station, and I'll be like, oh, you know, like, oh, how did you end up here, or like, what's the situation? And he'll tell me about like the intricacies of like where he takes his recycled cans to get money, like, and like how they have like competitions about where they do things. And I'm like, oh, that's really fascinating. Okay, that's like one piece of what life is like in New York. Wait, sorry, that was a Shreen trying to FaceTime me. So she's trying again. I'm going to put do not disturb on. Yeah.
Nice one.
Yeah, so that'll be like one part of the piece, right? And then the other part, you'll be like, I've had like a tech billionaire who was like coming in for like a surgery at one point, and like he was in the private wing of the hospital, and I was just like, oh, okay, this is also exists here. And people are just so like unguarded when they're speaking to their doctor. Like they will tell you anything and everything about like their life.
Yeah.
And like it's just the stories I've come across, or like I remember I was in a hospital and like I was riding on a patient in the ICU, and I walked in and she was like handcuffed to the bed, and I was like, oh, what's going on? There was like police officers there. And it turns out she was like a drug mule from like South America. And like we did a CT scan of her abdomen, and she had like over $300,000 worth of heroin in like finger packets inside her. And one of them had ruptured, and she'd gone into like a respiratory depression, and she had to come like, and it's just like for me, that part of the adventure of like being a doctor in New York, if you could just tell me like, oh, I will pay you whatever you've been paid the last couple of years, isn't very much, or like whatever, like 70,000 or whatever, I'll pay you $70,000 a year for like 3 years, go live in New York and have an adventure. I would much rather choose to like live in New York as a doctor and have had that adventure, just because like it opens up things to you, like it opens up angles to you of things that you'd never have seen before. And as a life experience, like I'll always be like, oh yeah, I was a doctor in New York. Like, oh, I trained in New York. Like that's like, it gives you more of a purpose rather than being like, oh, I was in an RV in New York, or like, I was in an RV in America. Like that's just what I thought. So for me, it was always a much bigger part of the adventure was the thing itself, alongside other things. Cause like, we've spoken before, I don't want to just do clinical medicine my whole life. Like I definitely want to go off and start a company, and I'm interested in tech things, like AI related things, or pharmaceutical development, or even management consultancy. Like I'm very much I will not be a 5 days a week dermatologist. But for me, like this training period of my life of being young and coming over and being a trainee doctor in America, like that was definitely a big part of that adventure. So I guess that's where it's different for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because again, like as you were kind of painting that picture, I was thinking, yeah, that does kind of sound cool, and that's a big part of why I want to stay in medicine in some capacity, because I think when you're a doctor in a new city, actually, mostly the reason I think it's cool is because it just taps you into a pre-existing social network where you kind of mates with the other doctors, and that's kind of cool. But yeah, it's I think for me, as much as I would like as much as I would like to have the level of enthusiasm that you have for it, it's just not. I just don't, and I could probably talk myself into it, and certainly my mom would very much prefer it. Like if she's watching the stream right now, she'd be kind of singing your praises, be like, "Oh my god, he's like the perfect guy."
Thank you, Auntie. Thank you. I actually just finished praying as well.
Very good. But yeah, I think for me that kind of pre-existing that isn't this fun thing just isn't there, and for me it would probably it would be more exciting to say, you know, I'll give you $70,000, rent an RV, go around America, and I'd just hang out with people that you've met through Twitter, and not do a single day of clinical medicine. But
and truth be told, that makes sense. Again, like I said, it makes sense because your case is very much an atypical case. It's a case which like almost no one else will be able to relate to from the medical world, to be like, I genuinely have my other viable career path being this. So for in that case, it makes sense. I think for a lot of the rest of us, like that idea of having an adventure will almost inherently be tied to having a medical career somewhere else, because like we won't have an alternative source of income, or like, you know, to be able to go off full time, go do something else. So for other people, that same like you know itch that you're scratching with this, I feel like they won't have that option of this. So for them, maybe the medical route is like the only way of being able to do it, is kind of like having the adventure alongside your medical training, rather than like pause your training for 3 years, go to America, come back. Like, so I think if you have that position, then it makes sense. It makes sense to be a bit more discerning about whether or not studying for it's going to make sense. The only other thing was, I remember initially you were saying that like content wise, right? Like studying content wise, the USLE was going to be a good journey for you in terms of like, you get to do this, but also it's not just that, like this is tying into your content, right? Like you get to make study videos and you get to talk about your tips and like what worked well for you, especially for an exam which has this degree of heightened importance and interest throughout the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I guess if your content, you're shifting away from pure studying to more like lifestyle, life coaching and motivation and book clubs, then that also doesn't stay as an incentive.
Yeah, I think the studying thing is interesting. That was, to be honest, my main reason for thinking, oh, you know, there wouldn't be any harm done in taking step one. The way I'm thinking about that now is I've kind of got in my head that, hey, to be honest, if once a month I want to make a study with me video, I can still prepare for something like step 2 CK, which is kind of more clinical, or potentially even start preparing for one of the emergency medicine exams, you know, just as a way of studying, just to keep the knowledge up there, rather than, you know, sitting down and being like, all right, let me memorize all the different, I don't know, glycogen storage disorders and. That
would be a good video though, if you could figure out how to memorize those. Yeah, I think it makes sense. Honestly, it makes sense. You're in a perfect position that you have like a lot of different alternatives to be weighing up, and I can't say truly that if I was in your position, I would still have had that same motivation to go to America to pursue residency training. Like, I don't know, it's like a theoretical that I didn't have to like kind of weigh up at the time. So I think it's definitely a much harder decision for you. I think for a lot of like your colleagues or other doctors and UK medical students, etc., I think for them it's much more relevant to hear about this kind of like, you know, weighing up the comparators of the two, just because they won't have that YouTube X factor to like have to compare everything to. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you're on your RV trip around America, you still have to stop by here. And, you know, I'll give you a tour of the hospital, and you can get a photo up in your scrubs. And then, you know,
sick. Yes, that can be good content. Because, like,
exactly.
I swear Shireen was doing that for like 2 years before she even matched into residency.
I know, yeah. She had like 25 pairs of figs, and I was like, you haven't done a single shift yet. Like, what are you doing with all these pairs of figs? She's walking around the house in figs. I'm like,
it's all about the branding. All about the branding.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you guys got a spare bedroom / couch?
By that point, we will.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But we have plenty of space in this. We're actually pretty lucky. It's like 1,000 square foot apartment kind of thing, which is pretty rare to come by on the Upper East Side. So there's always enough space for you, Ali.
Excellent. How much is rent generally in like a nice area of New York?
It's comparable to, I'd say, like London. Like, say this is subsidized, so this won't be a fair comparison. But like getting like if you're trying to rent a studio or a 1-bedroom apartment, you probably do it on like Airbnb. But like if you're trying to get in a nice area, you can get a studio probably for close to like 2,000 in Manhattan per month.
Okay.
So it's like maybe on the pricier side compared to England. Maybe if you're specifically living in Manhattan. But if you're willing to go to like Queens or Brooklyn or something, then you can get like some better rates. But who wants to come all the way and then not live in Manhattan? So.
What about
exactly?
Okay, so I've been toying with the site. So earlier this week, I took delivery of my Tesla Model 3, which
oh, nice! I remember seeing you upload that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm working on a few videos about it. But I've been toying with this idea of, well, initially I was gonna travel the world, but then Corona happened, and so now my now my travel the world plan involves I'm toying with the idea of doing a road trip through Europe and living in a different city every 1 to 2 months. I really like the idea. So, for example, in Paris, once they get out of lockdown, renting an Airbnb for like 1 or 2 months in like a really nice central location. That would then become a business expense because I can basically turn it into the studio. I can pack the lights and camera and everything in the car and go there, and kind of use that as a base to churn out content and to try and learn new skills like cooking and language and stuff while kind of exploring the place. I feel like that sounds like it would be quite doable in a place like New York as well, just visiting for a couple of months.
Yeah. I mean, what I always tell people is like I think it's never worth coming to New York for like 3 or 4 days. I know a lot of people do it, but I'm like, it's really not worth it because you're not gonna leave in love with New York unless you're just like so brainwashed by the Statue of Liberty or like Times Square or whatever. Because when I've been to New York several times before I moved here, and I was always like fairly indifferent to it. I was like, it's just a dirtier London. Like
Yeah.
it's dirtier and it's like slightly busier. Like it smells like piss everywhere. Like, well, all right, this is nice, but like I'm all right with London. And then I came out from my elective and I spent a month in New York. And the first week was the same reaction. I was like, why does it smell so strong? Like, where are these smells coming from in an outdoor area? Like, am I literally standing next to a piece of crap right now? Like, how is it so bad?
Mm.
But then after like a week in, I was like, I kind of love this place. And then like by the end of the month, I was literally leaving. I remember on the drive back to the airport, looking back and being like, I have to be back. Like there's no question about it. Like this is where I have to be. Like it was that clear cut for me, just because it gets under your skin, New York. And this is something which you hear people say, and you're always like, here we go, Americans, like typical Americans. Like, they always get all like, they always think they're in a movie scene, like the way they talk sometimes about things. But New York is one of those where if you spend a prolonged period of time there, like you may never end up leaving. Honestly, that's like the cautionary tale I'll give you, is that you may never end up leaving if you come here for a month or two. But it will definitely be good content, man, if you come out here.
Yeah, man, that's a plan. Um,
Mm.
Another thing, well, I
Mhm.
wanted to ask about the America thing. So,
Mhm.
in the UK, in some places, there is a perception that if you are an international medical graduate, that you are inherently less competent than
Yeah.
a sort of a UK-based person, especially if you have a
Mhm.
strong accent, especially if you visibly look at a place, especially if you kind of concede that you've never worked in a hospital before and this is your first kind of
Yeah.
F2 job. Um,
Yeah.
to what extent is that a thing in America? Like, to what extent are you going to looked down upon for being an IMG?
I think it's like it's definitely regionally specific. So for example, New York is famous for being a very IMG friendly city, meaning that like a lot of IMGs match in New York, and that's because the shared narrative of New York is that it's the city of immigrants. Like you come over here, you have your American dream. Like everyone belongs in New York. It doesn't belong to anyone. Like that's the mentality here, and that's like very much internalized in the people you're with. So in the hospitals here, also by virtue of that fact, the pure amount of IMGs in New York is like through the roof. So it's the norm. Like when patients come in, they're not going to find it strange that there's like a person from another country as their doctor, because that's probably what they've had every other time they've been in a hospital in New York. If you went to like rural Alabama and like you were the first IMG they'd ever had there, you'd probably get some looks, I'm sure, and there would be like that accent like kind of discount where people judge you a little bit by the fact that you have a strong accent. And I think if you're from England, you're very lucky because your accent becomes your biggest weapon. That's like, they absolutely love it. They can't get enough of it. And like to the point where like my consultants would send me into difficult patients rather than them, because they'd be like, they'll listen to you. So it's just like, so that works in your favor. But naturally, if you're someone from like South America, if you're someone from like, South Asia, Middle East, etc., and you have a thick accent, yeah, there will be those couple of patients who like will naturally be like, I don't know what you're saying or something, and like that might be a bad experience for you. But just know that like you're actually in the majority of the vast majority of doctors in a place like New York, especially in specialties like internal medicine, etc., are IMGs. So you're gonna fit right in. And the beautiful thing about being like in New York, just broadly speaking, is that like uh, you really don't get that sense where like you're an outsider. Like from day one, you'll sit there on the subway, look around you, and be like, I could have been here my whole life. Like no one will be looking at me like, where's this guy from? Just because everyone looks so different. So like, that's pretty nice. In terms of the programs, yeah, naturally there's like an IMG like taboo as compared to an American grad. But I honestly don't blame them. Initially, I used to be a bit salty about this, being like, oh, if I was an American grad, I'd like have my pick or whatever, all this kind of stuff. But like, truth be told, if you were a program director or a chairman, wouldn't you just pick someone who is from your own country, who like knows the society? Like you don't have to worry about visa immigration issues. Like you would, right? Like it makes sense. Um, so I don't kind of begrudge that. So that does exist when you're applying for residency. When you're applying for fellowships afterwards, if you decide to apply for fellowships afterwards, or consultant jobs, there's really not that much of a taboo. It's like a pretty flattened hierarchy by that point, because you've had like 3 years of residency, so you're all pretty much together. Then all they care about is like, where did you finish your residency from? Not where was your original medical school from? People don't really care about that. Fellowships, yes, some of the competitive ones might still have that, like, oh, what medical school is he from kind of thing. But I don't know. It's all just the volume of it all tones down. Once you're into residency, once you're part of the system, then it's
Everyone
very
kind of
much
chills
like,
out a bit.
okay, exactly. Like you proved yourself. You proved that you're not going to come in and like scream at a patient
Yeah.
on day one, because that's like the norm in your country or something, like whatever else like stereotype they might have.
Okay. How on that note, how do fellowships work? I was speaking to an orthopedic guy who actually emailed me because he saw that I grabbed coffee with random fans, and so he came to Cambridge just to grab coffee. And he's just finished
Nice.
he's just finished his training in the UK, and he's doing a fellowship in Canada.
Yeah.
How do fellowships kind of post training work?
You mean fellowships for IMGs, or you mean like when you're over there?
I mean, fellowships for IMD, for example, if I were to do ACCS and then emergency medicine training here, can I then
Yeah.
go to America to do a fellowship?
You can, and a lot of people do. It's more common in ophthalmology and orthopedics, weirdly enough. Like just
Okay.
because I think in the UK there's so few fellowships for those that exist that people end up going to the US and trying to like apply very broadly.
Okay.
So you can apply for fellowships, but you need your USMLE exams
Oh, okay.
to do
Well, all of them.
to do fellowship. Yeah, you need to be ECFMG certified.
Oh,
So
damn.
like again, yeah, to be a doctor and to be able to like lay hands on someone there, you have to have your ECFMG certifications and IMG. So like that's why I actually tell a lot of people, like even ophthalmologists who are like, no, I'm going to do training in England. I'm like, all right, think about doing your STEP exams in medical school because like this knowledge is comparatively fresh for you now.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you've done 8 years of specialist training in opthal, then you come back and you see the
Glycogen storage disorders. Yeah.
It's going to nosebleed immediately in class. You just get pink eye at the ophthalmologist. There's no escape from that. Like you're going to need to do it one way or another. So if just for a 1 year fellowship, I know it's really frustrating. So it's better to get them done early on in your career rather than later if you have any hope of going over there. But you can get fellowships there, and people do it. It's much less frequent, and obviously you're not going to typically get the most prestigious fellowships because why wouldn't they take all their American grads who are competing amongst each other, who've done residency there even, that they know have the same level of training, etc. But it is an option, like a small option, but it is an option.
Okay, cool. So we've got some more questions from the chat. Oh, we've got a question. Can you practice in the UK after training in the US, which we are working on a video about, which I filmed, which is currently being edited.
You're the expert on this. You're the expert on this.
I'm the expert on this. I'm going to answer the question. So a few people are asking in the chat that if you do your residency in the US, can you then move back to the UK as a consultant? And the answer is sort of, but it's going to be really, really hard because firstly, your residency qualification, like your board certification in the US, is unlikely to be by default recognized by the Royal Colleges in the UK. I think there's only 2 of them, which is dermatology and anesthesiology. Is that right?
Not dermatology, it's radiology.
Radiology and anesthesiology. See, if you have those board certifications in the US, it counts as you've completed your training in the UK. For every other specialty, you have to kind of make an appeal to the Royal College and to the GMC to say, hey guys, look, I've done this residency program in emergency medicine. I want you to stamp and give me a certificate that this actually counts as being equivalent to the Royal College of Emergency Medics qualification. So that's one step. Beyond that, let's say you do manage to do that. You then have to think about, would you actually get a consultant job? And chances are pretty low because firstly, consultant jobs are in sort of there's a mismatch of supply and demand in the UK. Like there is a lot more supply of registrars who finish their training in the UK compared to the amount of jobs that are available. And so it's actually quite hard to apply and to get a consultant job, even if you train as a registrar in the UK. And then if you think about the people who are going to be interviewing you, they're going to be other consultants from the UK, and you're going to rock up as a 28-year-old attending from America, be like, hey guys, I've done 3 years of training and I am equivalent to a registrar who spent 8 years training in specialty in the UK. Please take me as a consultant. That seems kind of unlikely. So assuming that doesn't work out for you, you'll probably have to go into a training program in some capacity. And so you'll end up essentially being at the same level of potentially an ST3 or potentially even a core medical trainee, even though you're technically a consultant in the US. And so those are the kind of factors you have to weigh up if you want to transition from the US to the UK. It's not impossible, but it's not the easiest route. And certainly we would normally advise against people wanting to people who say, hey, I'll do medical school and then I'll go to the US because it's an accelerated residency program and then it means I can become a consultant in the UK sooner. Was that about right?
Yeah, that's 100% right. Yeah, it's definitely not a shortcut you should consider taking. And also, it has a lot of heartache and like money and expense and uncertainty to go through to ultimately try and come back to England. Like I just feel like it's something like to have in the back of your head as an emergency. Like if something happens and you have to absolutely drop everything in America and come back to England for whatever reason, then yeah, you can try and put the pieces back together again and see what you get in England. But it's definitely not like a reliable shortcut to kind of short circuit the process and become an attending sooner.
Yeah, fair dues. Just kind of general question for me that I've been curious about. Have you like learned anything interesting about yourself through your kind of residency program that you've done in the US?
For me, so again, I probably shouldn't say this in terms of like my medical school attendance may have been the lowest in the history of like a medical school in terms of like how many things I was able to go to, and I was very skeptical. Like, am I actually capable of being able to like do a real job? Because I'd never worked like throughout my time. I was always and the parents gave me money, etc., loans. So that just that factor of like going to the US for me and that intensity that I'd heard about, I was so scared about, because I was like, even for someone who's like a really disciplined, like by the book student is going to be a bit scared to go to America. So for someone like me, like I'm going to fall apart. Like I'm going to like sleep through my alarm clock 3 times in the first week and get fired or something. So I'd say that part of it, I've been like pleasantly impressed with that. Like, when needs must, right? Like when you actually don't have a choice of the matter, and it's actually, contractual employment, like I am able to wake up at 5:30 a.m. to go start my day at 7 kind of thing. So that's kind of pleasantly surprised me. The other thing that surprised me is like my enjoyment of medicine. It has kind of surprised me, because like I didn't even want to do medicine at medical school. Like I was like the stuff I liked more throughout my whole time in like high school, etc., was languages. Like I loved English language and literature, and I loved writing, and I loved reading, and I loved like politics and philosophy and like comparative religion. Like that's 100% what I'm more interested in even now. That's like what I naturally gravitate towards. Like what I in my times of like like leisure, I will read those things or I'll listen to podcasts about those things. And then medicine was like the family profession, basically. My dad's a doctor, my 3 older brothers are doctors, and like it's all my uncles are doctors, everyone's a doctor. So like in my family, you got to become a doctor first, get the MD certificate, and then you decide what you want to do in life. So I was like very much like, ugh, whatever, let me get this done, and then like, I'm never gonna enjoy it, but it is what it is. It will be my backup, and then I'll go off and do other things. But then life as a doctor is just so much different to life as a medical student. I don't know if you found the same, but like as a medical student, I was just like perpetually in the way. Like no matter where I stood, I could be in like the most obscure corner of the hospital, and it'll turn out that like the most important crash cart medicine is always behind me. Like I'm always just in the way, feeling pointless. Like when I'd go to speak to a patient, like I'd feel like I'm wasting their time, because like the other doctor's going to come here and do the same thing again. So I just really didn't enjoy it. And then when I came here, I actually started my job. My first year was in internal medicine before I did dermatology. I was actually just there like going through my list, like coming up with differentials and putting things together and having like relationships with patients. And then like just little things like when the patient at the end of your interaction is like, oh, like doc, like do you have a card? Like can I have your card? Like can I see you outside the office? Like little things like that where you're like, oh, like this person like had such a good experience that they want me to be like their long-term doctor, because like they felt like I'd explained things so well for whatever reason. Like it was genuinely so rewarding in its own way that I was like surprised by that. Like I didn't think I was ever going to have that mentality of like, oh, well, no matter what, I will always maintain one presence in clinical medicine. Like for me now, even in my best case scenarios I think of in the future, I'm still doing like my clinics 2 days a week or something at least, so that I can have like my regular patients that I see, because it's actually just become genuinely enjoyable for me. And like part of it is also I think like the just during Corona, you see the whole like the fact that like when the whole world's falling apart, like doctors come to the fore, like as like they're the ones who are like the vanguard, like that's who is like selfless, who's putting themselves on the line. And that level of appreciation, I think that like that gave people, I think it also made me like see my own profession with a bit more kind of like reverence. So I'd say that's probably what surprised me most.
Nice. Yeah, because like, I guess when you come from a family of medics, and where everyone that you meet at parties when you're young is medics, and then you go to medical school, and it feels like such a standard thing, like almost as if you lack imagination by doing medicine. And so I think kind of people in that position, we rarely stop and appreciate, actually, this is a pretty cool thing to be doing, and it's a privilege and all that stuff. And I think, for me as well, the Corona situation, I think in the hospitals, there was in the hospital, there was a real sense of, we're all in this together, guys. We're all kind of, we're all kind of scrubbing in, as it were.
Yeah.
It's one of those interesting ones. So,
Well, what are you thinking, Ali? I feel like you sort of paused again.
Yeah, I'm thinking just. I feel like doing F1 and F2 in the UK. Very occasionally, like especially on the times where I was working in the emergency department, I kind of had that feeling of, okay, this is cool. I'm kind of doing my own thing. I'm getting the differentials. I kind of know what's going on. Equally, because I was on obs and gynae for a solid 8 months. By midway through / towards the end of it, I was pretty confident with most early pregnancy bleeding scenarios, and I kind of knew what was going on. And it was like a nice, rewarding feeling of kind of competence at like, okay, I can actually deal with this, and people are saying thank you, and it's just kind of generally nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was quite a rewarding part of it. And I think maybe for me, the thing that I'm discounting right now is that when you're a resident slash registrar and you have more ownership of patients and you can
Mm,
kind of do more stuff, it just automatically becomes more fun. And so maybe
yeah.
in my like I'm worrying that in my head maybe I'm discounting medicine a bit too early because all I've experienced is the
Mm,
F1 and F2 life of it, whereas actually
yeah.
maybe registrar life might be more fun and more interesting. So
Mm. I think that that's it's probably inevitable. I mean, like no one ever says as a registrar or as a consultant, like, oh, F1 and F2,
yeah,
those are
those
the
are
years. Yeah. Everyone's always like, oh, you got to slog through those years and then it gets better. And I think that part of it gets better is your own competency and then like autonomy and control over a situation. Like I think it makes like heaven and earth difference because I think that's what's made me enjoy medicine more. Because I think in the US you don't really have that F1 F2 phase. Like from the beginning you're straight in there doing things. Like Shireen, she had her like second shift in the ED like a couple of days ago, and she placed a central line like by
oh
herself, like an
yeah.
ultrasound guided like central line that she'd never done before, and like she was relocating someone's dislocated shoulder, and then she like a bunch of these different things, which like I don't know that you would do at that like accelerated pace kind of thing, right? If you were in England on your second shift, you'd have probably done it on a mannequin for like 6 months
Mm.
first, and then like slowly had the attending hold your hand while you do it or something. I don't know. So I think and having that like your own connection, right? Like with your same patients that you see, and having that like confidence to truly manage it. Like I definitely think that's the most fun part of being a doctor is like when you reach that level of you're the one in control making the decisions, and you're the one who like can say things with with surety. Like when a patient asks me a question now, and I don't have to be like, here's what that's what I think, but let me go bring my consultant in. Like when I'm like, yeah, no, absolutely, don't worry about it. Like that's what it is. And they're like, oh, thank you, doctor. And I'm like, yeah, I am the doctor. You know. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine it's very
But listen,
satisfying when that happens. Yeah.
I'm sure so is an RV across the Grand Canyon, right? Like everything has its own satisfaction, right? Like
That's true.
seeing sunrise over the Grand Canyon while like filming it on like super ultra HD or something like that'll have its own
Yeah, you know,
have its own feel.
as my mum says, if you wanted to be a YouTuber, why don't you just do media studies as a degree instead of medicine?
Doesn't she know it's all part of the brand? I'm a doctor and
Exactly.
YouTuber.
She doesn't understand it.
How many times do you have to say Cambridge medical student in your videos
Exactly.
before she gets?
Oh, God, it's so annoying. What can you
Yeah,
do? How have you found
yeah.
how have you found the kind of isolation aspect of being away from friends and family and stuff?
It's been okay to be honest. I mean, I think generally I'm pretty like adaptable person. Like the fact that like I came out to US by myself, just
Mm.
for context. I don't have any like friends that I knew that were in the US. I didn't have a network of like social media friends from YouTube or etc. who are like out in the States. I had no family members in the US, and I'd actually just got married. So like I came out to New York by myself and kind of just like venturing out because I'm like, it makes sense for me to do at the time. So I've always been someone who's fairly comfortable in like kind of doing my own thing. And like if you left me alone unbothered for a week at home, I would probably not notice that I've been at home for a week on my own. I'm kind of just doing things. But also pretty quickly after the corona thing started, like outdoor hanging out was like back on the agenda again. It was like made pretty clear. So like meeting up in Central Park and like hanging out in that kind of surrounding, and it just and like outdoor dining here is amazing now. Like every street you go down, like they've got rid of parking spots, and like every restaurant has its own like outdoor seating lined up on the sides. So it just feels like you're walking through some kind of like European plaza or something. So it's pretty cool, honestly. It's been a pretty nice vibe. We still meet people, we still hang out outdoors, we still do things. So it's been pretty chill for me. And then for Shireen especially, like it's been good for her because she's been more busy now at the beginning of her first year, and it's been kind of nice not having the FOMO of like non-stop like big hangouts with people that she's had to miss because of a shift or something. So it's been kind of nice because I tell her like when she's having a long shift, I'm like, it doesn't matter, like it's Corona, like just focus on you, like you're not missing out on like a bunch of other fun things. So for us, it's been all right. How about for you? I guess you said you've been meeting someone every day for dinner, so I guess lockdown's over in England.
Yeah, lockdown is pretty much over in England. It seems like no one cares about it
Yeah,
anymore. All of the
yeah, we've
restaurants.
cured it.
Yeah, exactly. We got the vaccine. All of the restaurants in Cambridge have gone basically back to normal opening hours. We had the
Yeah.
whole eat out to help out thing as well.
The what? Sorry.
Oh, there was this new scheme.
Oh, eat out to
Eat
help
out
out.
to,
Yeah,
yeah.
I heard about that. Yeah.
And it was amazing because on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays, basically every day for August, all restaurants were half price. And
That's amazing.
I'd often be at restaurants and I would just forget this was a thing. And I'd get the bill. I'd be like, why is this so cheap? Oh, we're eating out to help out. And there's still some restaurants like doing 50% off for NHS workers. So I still have my junior Dr. Lanyard that I occasionally carry with me if I need to. But no,
That's
things
amazing,
have
man.
been
Yeah,
pretty good.
get to be a hero for having a samosa. You're just there like, I'm saving the economy.
I'm saving lives, saving the economy. And so my housemate Molly, who I was living with for 2 years, she moved
Oh,
out.
Cambridge Foodie.
Cambridge
At
Foodie.
Cambridge Foodie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone follow her.
Yeah.
She moved out, I think, about a month ago. And so I was on my own for a bit, which was quite fun because I could just have all of like the studio set up and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, yeah.
But now one of my other friends from university is staying over for the next 3 months, and so it's quite like a
Whoa.
nice
3
social
months.
vibe. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
wow.
no, so things are pretty good. Things are pretty good here.
Well, good to know. I've always got a landing spot for 3 months if I'm in England, man. I'm just gonna turn up at your door and
Absolutely,
be like,
man.
"Hey, Ali, I'm not here for 3 months."
Yeah, mate, you're welcome. Got a spare bedroom and everything.
Oh, awesome, man.
I've even washed the bed sheet some of the time. I've been told that I need to do laundry more often. So we're working on
Wow.
that. And yeah, generally things are going all right. Just
Dude, you really leaned into unemployed life, man. Like, look, washing your bed linens more.
no, it's been pretty good. And actually, the house is looking pretty clean because Sheen, the friend who's staying over, has cleaned it earlier today. So that's ideal.
But like, how about Operation Find a Wife, Ali? Has that also accelerated in proportion with your free time, or has that been put on the back burner for now?
We'll talk about that off the record.
Off the record, right? Because I was looking out for people here for you, because I was like, all right, sweet, that'll be how we get Ali a green card. He'll come over here. I have someone here ready. Get them done. Get the green card. You let me know off the record.
I'll let you know off the record. But yeah, no. I think you should keep on looking because I need more factors that are pulling me over to the US at the moment. So.
All right, sweet. I haven't given up on it, man. I'm convinced. I'm convinced that this would be a fun experience for you. Honestly, like, I'm saying, even with everything else going on, I don't think you would ever regret spending 3 years in your mid-20s to become board certified in emergency medicine from a New York program. Like, I think that would be a life experience for you that you would, like, there's no chance you would regret. You would walk off the rest of your life, be like, oh yeah, board certified in emergency medicine. Yeah. Oh, it was amazing. I spent my mid-20s learning emergency medicine in Manhattan, of all places. Like, you'll never believe what I saw. Like, the things I saw, I know the city now. Like, you'll never believe. I think it'd be an amazing experience, but we'll keep this the slow pitch. The slow pitch will be ongoing.
Keep the slow pitch, yeah. So to what extent can USMLE Step 1 preparation be a slow burn? Because you did like very, very intensively over 3 months. Like, how feasible would it be to kind of do it, as you said, kind of set this December the 1st deadline for doing the exam?
Well, dude, I know a guy who has a good study YouTube channel who reassures me that when you learn things further apart, you retain them for double the length, basically, for a longer length of time. So I think using the principles of active recall in that sense, I think you could definitely do it as a slow burn. Like, I wish I was the type of person who was able to work at that kind of healthy speed and was disciplined enough. I don't have that. Like, you know, the procrastination video that I saw you link, the TED talk, the panic monster.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very much one of those. I need the panic monster to be like on my neck, like screeching in my ear before I will do things. So for me, I don't think I could do the slow burn. But if you're someone who can, there's a set of resources, right? Which again, we go through in our course, How to Make in America. We talk through exactly what you have to go through step by step to get an amazing score in your step 1, right? So you know what that list of things is. If you have a 12-month timeline to get through that list, even better, right? Like, you can go through it in your own comfort. The question banks will show you where you're at in terms of your evolution. You can cycle through the resources and question banks over time and take those mock self-assessments that we talk about, right, at periodic intervals. So you can literally track your own progression and see where you're heading. And then if it gets to close to that time, November, and you're doing the slow burn and your mock evaluations are telling you that you're scoring a 195, then cool, bump your test, delay it to February of next year, get the pass, and move on with your life.
Yeah.
But like, I think don't live in regret, because honestly, you're in that position right now where, with your medical school, with your ability to take exams, with your overall like strength of your application, from like all of these kind of things make you interesting. Like, your YouTube will make you infinitely more interesting as a candidate than someone else, and they care about that in America. Like, when they triage and when they interview you, most of your interviews, they will talk about your YouTube. Like, they will find that a really interesting asset to their program. Like, I know, because even with Shireen, who has like whatever 60K followers on Instagram, it came up like regular intervals throughout her interview trail, and they found that really interesting. And her program right now will like repost her stories, and they'll ask her to like tag them in their stories, because they find that cool that it's like their brand and their program associated with this blogger. At Halal Go New York, by the way, guys, I had to put that plug in there. So that kind of thing, like, they will talk about it. So you will be such a strong applicant that like you could take your pick of cities. If you were like, I want to match in New York, you'll match in New York. Like, if you just take the right steps between now and then and decide that it's something that's a priority for you. Like obviously you know yourself, it's not something which is impossible for you. It would just be something that you would have to decide is a priority, right? So like that's what it comes down to. So that's always what's going to be in my head, is that like you could picture yourself walking through the corridors in one of the hospitals here in the emergency room in Manhattan for 3 years, and you wouldn't regret it. Like that's just one of those life experiences where you would just be like, that was really cool. Like no matter what else, that was really cool. And now I'm board certified. Now when I do my US tours or whatever, maybe I'll drop by like, California, do like a week in an ED in California. That would be fun. What a fun way to get to know the city. Just get there, meet some people, make friends in different places. That's what I think.
Damn, you're really selling it. Okay,
that's my honest opinion. I wouldn't say that to everyone, but for you, it's my honest opinion.
Okay. Yeah, because that does sound pretty good, and I can't imagine I would regret it. Like I feel like it would just be a fun thing to do.
I feel like it's like me and Taymor on either shoulder.
Yeah.
He's there being like, no, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think you've. I'm gonna sleep on this, and I will drop. I'll drop you a message sometime tomorrow if I need another burst of motivation, because there's a certain YouTuber I know who talks about how motivation is a myth, and actually we should just be reliant on discipline. But
that's what I've heard.
Even so.
And he types really fast, and he has a really good morning routine for productivity, guys. So definitely check that out as well.
Yeah, types really fast. But even he says that this whole motivation is a myth is an ideal state of affairs, and very few of us have actually reached enlightenment so as not to need motivation. So it's always good to have motivation.
If anyone's reached enlightenment, then you have, Ali. If anyone has reached it, it's you and like Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, I guess it wouldn't be too bad. I've got my subscription to Pathoma. I've got my subscription to Amboss. I think I started out with.
Yeah.
It's just doing a slow burn.
It's a dude. And what I say in the course, what I say other things is like knowledge is empowerment. That feeling of knowing things is like incredible. To me, at least, is incredible. And like to the point where even now that I've been a derm resident for 3 years, because I learned stuff so fundamentally well in my step 1, and even in my medicine year, because I learned stuff so fundamentally well, I can like staff patients with Shireen. Like she will talk to me about a case she has, and I'll be like, okay, but have you done this and done this? Because you have to bear in mind this is this. And like, it feels so good to me being like, oh, I'm like a derm resident. I'm almost an attending in derm, but if you mention one of these things to me, I can mix it. Like I can mix it with an IM person about this, and I can mix it with someone else about this, just because like there was that time in my life where I like had immaculate knowledge of like these different things, and that was because of step 1. That wasn't because of medical school. It was because of step 1 that I reached that level of like perfect cohesion of like all these different body systems.
It all makes sense.
That like since then I hadn't lost, and I was just saying like, oh my god, like I know what the spleen does. Like,
what the hell does the spleen do?
For this. Exactly. Like it's all these things that you hear, and there's suddenly it comes together. So that is fun, man. Like there's an element of fun when it comes to mastering a knowledge base, right? And I feel like medical school in England, criticize me for whatever, I went to a good medical school in England, but like I never achieved any degree of like mastery of like these fundamental principles until I studied for step 1. That's what I think. So like I think you would enjoy that part of it, man. It's not torture. Like doing the step 1 for me was not torture.
Okay.
Because like I like learning things. It wasn't. It was something which like required sacrifice and prioritization. But I was actually like, like so much of the time I was like, oh my god, yes, that makes sense now. So that's just my 2 cents on it. Like I think we're quite similar in how we approach studying for things, and like I don't think you will find it torturous.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and I guess it's now the 6th of September, so it's been basically exactly a month of unemployment, and I've kind of had my break, and
all you need is 2-3 hours a day, literally 2-3 hours a day, and you are at like the most comfortable length of time. Like I was doing whatever 10-hour days because I had 3 months. Yeah. If you did even 2-hour days, right, you have like quadruple the length of time I have. Yeah. So like it's just like a nice packet of things to keep you connected with medicine. It's like you're 2 hours a day of like, I'm a doctor. Like
this is my job. I'm going to work and doing my thing. Yeah. Live streaming it on Twitch or on YouTube or whatever. Yeah. Wear
your scrubs and sit down and study with me.
Yeah.
And then we can keep track of you.
can you arrange to send me some figs that I can I can
So
use
figs are actually expanding to the UK now. So
Oh, are they?
Anya, Shireen's twin sister, got contacted to be like an ambassador or something. So
Oh,
we
nice.
can kind of put in touch with you, man. I'm sure they would love to have you
Yeah,
as an
man, hook me
ambassador.
up. I would totally get some scrubs and
Yeah,
wear them while doing
while
prep for this
studying.
exam.
That's funny.
Okay, this makes
Oh
sense.
man.
So you think that if I go for this thing of USMLE sometime next year,
hmm
it wouldn't be too hard to get like clinical electives and letters of recommendation and all that crap.
No, no, it would be very easy, especially like in terms of observerships. You could
Mm,
easily get observerships. You can come over, you can network with the right people,
mm,
and again, otherwise, you have a very strong application. Like overall, as a Cambridge medic who like did well in medical
mm,
school, you have a very strong application. You have a compelling story. You have unique features. Like I've sat on admissions panels for these kind of things before in terms of like triaging applicants. You tick all the boxes. Like honestly, I feel like you would have a very easy time of actually matching. You wouldn't have that kind of like, oh, like no one wants me. This is kind of embarrassing. Like,
yeah.
after all of that, like what are my audience gonna say? Like they look up to me. What if I don't match? But you would match. Like it would be a very straightforward process for you. Honestly, I mean, if you told me you're applying for plastic surgery, I'd be like, right, we need to put in the work. We need to plan from now. We need to get lucky, and like
Yeah.
we can do it. Emergency medicine, you would have a strong chance, I think.
Okay. So what I should do is
Yeah,
I should basically like block out. I'm looking at my calendar now. Damn, I think you've
yeah.
convinced me. God damn it. I should block out just like a 3 hour block each day, which actually isn't that hard at all. And
No.
3 hours
And even
is
if it was
not
two
gonna.
hours, even
Yeah,
if it was 2 hours each day, honestly,
yeah.
like you have the length of time, right? Like that would be the equivalent of me having worked 8 hour days for 3 months.
Mm,
You have more than 12 months, right? Now we're saying 12. You actually have 14 months until this December deadline that we
yeah.
spoke about. 14 months. Like if you're telling me you can't study for an exam in 14 months, Sonny, I'm genuinely concerned. Like
That would be
that
genuinely
requires
concerning. That would be.
exactly. You've never studied for 14 months for anything in your life. Probably combined, you haven't done 14 months of studying.
Yeah.
So like at a low burn, and when you have more things going on in your life, fine. You take a break for a couple of days, focus
Mm.
on that other thing, and then when you don't, you maybe do slightly longer days. On days when you don't have that much else going on, on days when you can do an hour and a half of YouTube live with me, you could easily do do some other time with other stuff.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. I actually have so much time in my life. I'm just not using it.
You're like, what the hell have I been doing?
Yeah. No, it's like Parkinson's law in action because back when I had a real job, we were churning out 3 videos a week. For the last month
Yeah.
since I've been unemployed, we've only done like on average 1.5 videos a week, and I just don't know where the
Yeah.
time has gone. It's just like absolutely disappeared on just
But
like
let's say
random.
for me for today, I knew that I had this on the agenda. Like I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm doing a YouTube live, doing YouTube live with Ali. Like, that was my like task that I knew I had to do today.
Yeah.
Which meant that I did nothing in the build up, even though this is
Nothing for
like
the rest of the day.
3 p.m. in the afternoon. Yeah, I could have done so much stuff, but I was just like, yeah, but I got that YouTube live with Ali. As if it needed any prep. I was literally just like, it just like expanded to take up my entire like afternoon because I was like, I have that coming up. So it's true. Like when you don't like regiment these things. So I just don't think it's an unattainable task for you to do like two hours on average, 2 hours
Yeah.
of like random studying of this stuff. And also it's just the first pass through it that is more like soul destroying. Because once you once you do your first pass through things and once you start doing the question banks and then things start making sense, that's when it becomes fun. The first part is not fun because you're wandering in the wilderness where you're
Yeah,
like,
mate. I tried
what?
some amboss questions with a friend, and we got literally like 18 out of 20 of them wrong. And like, I've never even heard of this bacteria, never heard of this virus. This is not a thing.
Yeah, exactly. But imagine how you're gonna feel when you can tell me what type of RNA virus like this thing is. If you're like, oh yeah, that's a single strand positive sense RNA virus, you'll be like, why did they never tell me that?
Yeah.
Like, why did I not know that? And I'm a doctor. But yeah, like it'll be fun very soon. And this beginning walk through the wilderness where things just jump out at you out of nowhere, like NADPH. You're like, what?
Yeah.
What about NADPH?
What even is that? Yeah, I forgot.
Who are you? Once you get past that initial phase, it'll all start getting a lot more fun. So I don't know. I just think don't discount it early. And I think even if you treat it as like your connection to the medical world, right?
Yeah.
Like your connection to being a doctor while having like a mission driven approach to it. Like there is this deadline of this like exam in December 2021, whatever that life is, like how far away that is, that'll keep you like reasonably like disciplined in it. Because otherwise you'll probably just be tempted to completely forget some stuff, right?
Yeah.
And like get de-skilled in some sense in terms of your knowledge. So having this as it's just such a healthy timeline. That's what I keep coming back to, is that like if I was trying to persuade you now to cram and take it by January, this would be a hard push, because I'd be like, listen, Ali, all the fun things you're doing are good, but like just, pause for a couple of months. You can go back to all of them. Like that would be a hard push.
Yeah.
But to be like, to just plan for an exam in 14 months.
Yeah. I mean,
how hard can
that be?
A little bit of reading between now and then. Like I feel like it's eminently reasonable.
Yeah.
To fit that in.
And to be honest, even if I'm doing my kind of road trip around Europe thing, it'll be quite nice to spend like 2-3 hours in a Parisian cafe in the morning with my pain au chocolat and my jus d'orange and
exactly, because what else you can do? Like you're gonna feel like you're achieving things because you're gonna be all these amazing backdrops, and while keeping up this other thing, which like ultimately can like open up a whole new dimension of your life, of like having that experience of training in an American hospital. Like how many people can say they've gone off and done, like they've been trained? Where did you get trained as an emergency medicine doctor? I'm board certified. Actually, I trained in Manhattan for a couple of years in my 20s. Well, that's just that's just cool. What I want to be able to tell people. Like that's just what is like a cool chapter of your life, I feel like.
Nice. And I suppose on this kind of Europe trip, if I take Angus, my editor, he can be like a full-time videographer as well. So he can literally just be sitting on the table adjacent to me with the camera pointed at first aid.
Eating his pain au chocolat.
Be like, yep, this is going to be a study with me video.
Mate, Angus has got the life. He's going to go on a European trip now, just filming you. He doesn't even have to be in front of the camera. I want to be Angus, man. Can I take a pause from my training to be Angus?
Screw your residency.
I only have like 9 months left, man. 9 months, and then I'm free. So,
and then you're board certified.
Board certified dermatologist, man. Like,
what's the deal with kind of board certifications in different states? Do you have to board certify in different states to work there?
Typically, no. I like you have to get licensed in different states. The board certification is pretty universally recognized. It's American board certification, so it's not like a New York board certification.
Oh, okay.
But you apply for a state license. Okay. So like the state license procedures, it's just a bit of admin paperwork, getting different state licenses. Each of them charge you like $400 for you to apply there. So like you don't typically apply to all of them at once unless you need specifically to work in certain places. So I've applied for my New York state license like in anticipation of when I finish, because I'm going to be tied to New York for at least a couple more years. Frankly, I'm probably never leaving New York, just because like I don't know where I would go from here. But you see some of these salaries in these random locations, man. Like I got an offer the other day from a place like which is on the border of Canada, basically like upstate New York.
Yeah.
And they were like straight out of residency, $700,000 a year, offer for life, like in capitals, for life, like, and they're like, we'll give you a $50,000 relocation bonus, and like we'll also give you a residency stipend. Like you're still in residency for another 9 months, so while you're in residency, we'll pay you $2,000 a month while you're in residency, just to like keep you sweet. And I was just like,
damn.
I was like, how close to Canada are you? So yeah, but no, I probably will never leave New York despite those kinds of offers. But no, the board certification is universal, and then it's the state license thing that's regional. And the good thing about board certification is if you decide in the future, like, oh, maybe I want to go to like Dubai for a couple of years, or I want to see what life's like over there, like they also like value board certified physicians higher. My dad works in Abu Dhabi, so he knows that his US colleagues get paid more than he does, because he was an NHS trained doctor, and they're board certified American doctors, so they pay them more because they know they have to like incentivize Americans to come over more because their salaries are higher. So it's just interesting. You could also, like, if you have that like idea of maybe I want to work in the UAE in future, not you, but other people listening from England, it's a much faster pathway, because like UAE only recruits attending, like consultants. And to be a consultant in England, obviously you have to be like, you're close to 40, but I could be a consultant in a year, and I could go get a job in Dubai probably in like a year and a half if I wanted to. So it's good having that kind of different opportunity to be able to branch out in different areas. And increasingly places like Qatar and the UAE recognize American board more so than UK physicians, and they actually require some UK physicians to take the STEP exams to become certified. Okay. Yeah, one of my friends was going to Qatar, and she had to take the Step 2 CK before she could take a job in Qatar. So I'm like, one way or another, these exams are going to come back and like haunt you in some capacity. So like, so just get them done, guys. But yeah.
Damn. Right. Fine. I'm sold. I'm going to message my my assistant and be like, hey, can you block out 3 hours in my calendar every day for the next 14 months?
It's like, change the plan. Cancel the RV.
Yeah. Cancel the RV. I mean, no, the RV is fine. We can do the RV and this as well. Imagine waking up in the Grand Canyon, seeing the sunrise, opening up Anki, doing some flashcards while lying in bed.
Dude, that's amazing. That's amazing. Next July and August, pencil me, and I'm joining you wherever you are, because I'm going to have a couple of months free before I start a job as an attending. So
Oh,
maybe
incredible. Yeah, man.
I'll uproot and just come join you on a bit of a tour.
You can join the study with me videos, and
Yeah,
you can coach me on my glycogen storage disorders.
yeah. Sounds good, man.
Okay,
Dude,
cool.
I think this has definitely become a deep dive eventually. I mean, initially we thought it might be a shallow dive, but
Yeah, initially I was
this
like,
has
oh, you
become a
know
deep
what? I
dive.
can't kind of see me with this USMLE stuff. I just want. But it was that thing you said where you're like, well, if you did 3 years of residency in New York in emergency medicine, you'd never regret it. I was like, yeah, you're right. I
Yeah,
wouldn't.
I don't think you would, man. I don't think you would.
Yeah.
Um, oh, I just realized people are have been asking questions as well. Have we been ignoring everyone's questions?
I think since you said that phrase, I've been ignoring all the questions. A lot of people are saying I look really tired. I don't know if I look really tired. Do I look really tired? Oh yeah, damn, I look really tired. It's because I
What
haven't.
about me, guys?
I
What
think
about the dermatologist?
I think everyone's talking about how you look so attractive.
Well,
Okay,
thank you.
okay, but why is that guy
Yeah.
so attractive? Bruh, how are
Yeah.
you so smart, super envious? I think he was referring to you there.
I don't think so. But that's generous of you.
But yeah, because normally I have my fancy ass camera and I have a proper light shining in my face, but I just arrived home from a trip home before doing this deep dive.
Dude,
So,
when you come here, I'll get you a laser resurfacing. I'll give you some under eye filler. You'll be unrecognizable.
oh yes, dream. On that note, what?
Yeah.
So skincare wise,
Yeah.
what I've been doing is I use my Body Shop Pink Vitamin E facial cleanser thingy
Okay.
morning and evening, and then do I have it to hand? I use an SPF 15 face moisturizer,
Okay.
and that's all I do. And I have a night cream moisturizer type thing at nighttime. Is that
Okay.
legit? Slash, is there anything I should add to my skincare routine?
So I'm going to put on my real skin doctor hat here. So in terms of skincare routines, so what I tell everyone, so for all the followers, a bit of free skincare advice, there's only 3 things you really need in any of your skincare routines, no matter who you are. If you're like a supermodel or if you're someone who's just sitting at home playing video games, like there's 3 things you need in a skincare routine. One is a good moisturizer. So recently, actually, CeraVe have started selling in the UK. They initially never used to. So all of my friends who I told about CeraVe, they didn't know what it was because it was an American company.
Never heard of it.
It's spelled CERAVE, CeraVe moisturizing cream, and it's basically like it contains something called a ceramide, which is part of the body's natural outer skin layer that helps keep your epidermis intact, basically. Things called ceramides, and it's a ceramide based moisturizer. So it's it's evidence based. It's well priced. It works extremely well, and that should just be your go-to for moisturizing. And moisturizing is good just because the second you break your skin barrier, you start having like transepidermal water loss. That causes dryness. That causes irritation. You start scratching. Things get worse. So that's why moisturizer is important. So I recommend CeraVe very highly. This is not a paid collab. I wish I was working for CeraVe, but I'm not.
Wait, hang on. So let's stop there. So moisturizing lotion or moisturizing cream?
Take your pick. So a lotion is more watery. So some people find a lotion better for larger surface areas. So if you're like someone who has dry arms, maybe a cream is hard to apply to the entire area, but a lotion is easier to apply to bigger areas. Cream is more moisturizing inherently, just as a vehicle. But it's better for like your face usually to use a cream. And the good thing about CeraVe is a lot of these moisturizers that you find over the counter or even really fancy brands, they make you break out. So a lot of people get acne breakouts after they use their moisturizer, where CeraVe is specifically non-comedogenic, meaning it does not cause comedones, which are spots. So CeraVe.
Okay, hang on.
Great brand.
And so it says on Amazon for dry to very dry skin. Does that matter?
No, it also for regular skin.
Okay.
That's just like a lot of people with eczema specifically seek out moisturizers. So a lot of these moisturizers will be targeted to those people to give them like their buzzwords. But it's just like it replenishes your natural skin barrier.
Okay. I've just ordered my CeraVe moisturizing cream.
Excellent. So someone else says, how about Cetaphil? Cetaphil is also good. Cetaphil is good. I prefer CeraVe, but Cetaphil is also good. I just think CeraVe, like the smell is nicer, the way it spreads is nicer, and that's just kind of my go-to brand. The next thing, so we talked about moisturizer. The next thing is sunscreen. So you said you use an SPF 15 sunscreen. Now, I think that people need to know about SPF. So SPF is sun protective factor, and the way they calculate that is basically how fast a piece of skin will get sunburnt with and without the sunscreen. That's kind of what SPF means. So SPF 15, the time you reach that 15 number is if you apply like a thickness of sunscreen that no one really applies. Like if for you to truly get SPF 15 from that SPF 15 product, you would look like a geisha, like one of those, like you would literally be white like that because it'd be a really thick layer. So no one actually applies that layer. So what I tell people is that like If you apply an SPF 50 to the degree that's normal, you will get about an SPF 30 or 25. Like you roughly halve it in terms of what you actually achieve. And what we recommend for people is that you should be using an SPF of like 30 plus. So the higher SPF you can tolerate, the better, because the reality is you're probably not going to reapply it as often as you're supposed to. So you're going to sweat and some of it's going to come off and some of it's going to rub off and you won't have applied a thick enough layer. So go as high a number as you can tolerate and you will get something that is reasonable, kind of like a sun protective factor. So I recommend like 50 plus for people. And then I also recommend, in terms of sunscreens, there's like chemical blockers and there's physical blockers. So I always recommend the physical blocker sunscreens, which typically have zinc oxide or titanium oxide in them. So what you want to look for in a sunscreen is around about SPF 50, and you want it to be a physical blocker with titanium or zinc because they work the best.
Okay.
And then finally,
is 50 plus a thing in the UK? Because I don't see it on Amazon.
It probably will be if you search for like Neutrogena SPF 50 plus.
Oh,
just as
in 50 plus is not a brand. It's a SPF 50.
Oh,
plus.
no,
yeah,
it's the SPF 50, the number plus like above, yeah. And the other thing is, so for people who are like skin of color, it's better to get like a tinted sunscreen. So you can get ones that are tinted where like it'll blend in more naturally with your skin, because otherwise you look ridiculous. Because again, you will always have that white sheen on you.
So what about like someone of my skin tone?
Yeah, you should get a tinted one still, just because it'll blend in more naturally with your skin tone. So I prefer to get tinted ones. So that was like branch number 2 of 3 of everyone's skincare routine.
Hold up. I'm browsing. Where does it say tinted? I've searched for a sunscreen SPF 50 tinted, and
so just tinted will be like a description, like it'll be like a lot of brands have their own versions of tinted sunscreens.
Invisible tint finish sunscreen. Does that sound about?
Yeah, that one could work. Yeah, absolutely. So it's not like a one brand only does it. You'll just get them in like all sorts of different brands.
Okay. Oh, and but you said it needs to be. I should add the word physical to the search as well. Physical.
Yeah. Some of them describe it as physical. Some of them will just say it contains zinc or titanium, and that's when you know it is physical.
Okay. Oh, tinted sunscreen, 20 quid, but it looks like a super like Fuka Eri brand, mineral zinc sunblock, non-nano.
Yeah, I'm not too specific about like the brand of sunscreen, because there's not one particular one that I'm like, oh, this is the must. You have to use Neutrogena, etc. Use whatever you can get your hands on that that is tinted and has a high enough SPF. And
do you use it on your face or on your whole body?
Anywhere that's exposed to sun, really. So if you have your forearms out, you sit in the park, you should put it on your forearms, because this is especially for people who are like white. To be honest, like the white people get a ton of skin cancers. In terms of people who are our complexion, you have less rate of skin cancers, but photo aging is the reason why people look older than they are when they reach like, in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
If you use a good sunscreen when you're younger, that'll show like it'll be a heaven and earth difference by the time you're like 40 and 50, those who do and don't use sunscreens.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, I'm gonna just send you some links after this, and you can tell me, because I really can't find one that seems to be zinc and SPF 50 and tinted at the same time.
Don't worry, Will. And that's a business opportunity for us.
Yeah, no, exactly. It needs to be easier to search for these things. Dermatologist recommends. Okay.
So then, and then part 3 is a topical retinoid. So retinoids, for people who are interested, again, sorry for anyone who's here just for USMLE knowledge. Sorry for this tangent. But retinoids are vitamin A derivatives. So that means like they come from vitamin A. So that helps people who want like natural only. It's like, yeah, it's vitamin A. Like that's where it comes from. So topical retinoids are like an amazing kind of ingredient for most skincare products. And they come in different types. So like retinol, like with an OL ending, is the alcohol version of it, and that's it's not as strong, but it still has some effect. And the retinoic acid, so OIC, like retinoic acid, those ones are the stronger versions, but they're typically medical grade. Either way, even if you use the retinol, like have some kind of topical retinoid in your skincare regimen, because what that does is it increases skin turnover, which is good for making your skin like look younger, and it like is actually proven to reduce wrinkles. And it also helps with any kind of unevenness in your pigmentation, because it kind of the way pigment works in your skin is there's like a pigment producing cell, and it has all these little projections, and it kind of like sends the pigment out in packets to all the different cells on the surface of your skin. So what this does, what topical retinoids does, is it kind of like helps it distribute further so it evens out where the pigmentation is. So if you have like dyspigmentation or scarring for whatever reason, topical retinoids will help with that as well. And it increases collagen. It increases production of collagen. So it makes your skin like more full in terms of collagen. It evens out pigmentation, and it, with the increased skin turnover, it reduces acne outbreaks as well. So it genuinely is like a miracle ingredient. You hear about all these like miracle products, but topical retinoids genuinely are like an amazing ingredient in a skincare regimen. So working that into your daily routine, typically you apply at night, like a very small portion, like a little pea-sized amount for your entire face, and that should just be ongoing. That should just be forever. The only people that shouldn't use it is if you are pregnant. Then like, and not that it's been proven to have an effect, but because oral retinoids are proven to be teratogenic for people who have children, they always say that with topical retinoids, even just be careful. So don't use it if you're pregnant, FYI. This is not medical advice that I am liable to get sued for. This is just general skincare advice to a friend. Topical retinoids are a great thing to build into your schedule. So that's it. Those are the three.
Any brand in particular you'd recommend for the topical retinoid?
I don't know the UK brands. I only know the US brands. So there's like a brand called Differin Gel, Differin. Which I don't know if it exists in England, but maybe you can get it on Amazon.
I'm Amazoning it.
Okay. Yeah, in that case, just look up like, retinoid, topical retinoid,
okay.
etc. The way you know it's working is if you put it on and the next morning, like the folds just to the side of your nose are slightly peeling. Like if you put on a bit too much, you will feel it be tight the next day. Like it's
wow.
actually that active. That's why we say like put on like a pea-sized amount, and no one thinks that's actually enough. So like, I remember when I first used it, I was like pea-size here, pea-size here, pea here, like whatever. I woke up the next morning genuinely peeling. I was like, whoa, shit. So yeah, that's how you know it should actually it's actually working. Is like if you put on a bit extra, you should feel the tautness the next day, and then you know to kind of like reduce the amount you're using.
So is that what happens when you go to like a also heard facial place and they just peel shit off your face?
Oh no, those are chemical peels. So okay. they typically use a different types of acids. So they use like salicylic acid or beta hydroxy acid or alpha hydroxy acid or glycolic acid or trichloroacetic acid. This is just to prove to your followers that I'm
smart.
Good
flexing, yeah. I was like, damn, you know your stuff.
Yeah, a lot of acids. This guy knows a lot of
hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, carbonic acid.
So yeah, that's what they typically do. They use those kind of acids for the peeling effect. But topical retinoids are more of kind of like a long haul thing. They're not something which you put on and then the next day like you're supposed to peel off. It's just something that which you just build into your regular schedule long term. And yeah, if you guys are genuinely interested in more skincare stuff, follow at Real Skin Doctor, whatever, on YouTube. And if I know there are people actually interested, I will do more skincare videos about this kind of thing. Like right now, I just don't know whether there's much of an audience for people who want this kind of stuff because there's quite a lot out there. So maybe just link below Ali at some point in future. And then if more people want to hear this stuff, I can like do other lives or whatever.
Yes, I'm seeing if I can find a link to your channel because I'm not sure.
It's probably not even like enough to get on the algorithm.
Oh, here we go. You don't have a... My name is Dr. Usama Syed. Yeah, that's you. Everyone, I've linked it in the chat. Go follow Real Skin Doctor, RSD.
Yeah.
Although
I'm gonna start doing the things like, if we get 10,000 likes on this video, I will do the next video or that BS that you see on YouTube. Have you come across the acronym RSD in any other context?
No.
Why is it like some sexual thing? I'm worried now.
No, so RSD stands for Real Social Dynamics, and it was a group of pickup artists who used to be big on YouTube and on the internet like sort of 5 to 10 years ago, and their usernames were like RSD Julian, RSD Tyler. So you're RSD Osama. As like a pickup artist teaching nerds how to get girls, basically.
Yes, I'm teaching you guys how to pick up good skin. That's my version, guys.
Okay, right. Wait, this retinol stuff, I see that there's a lot on Amazon that are like these dropper type things. Is that what you mean?
I think it's better off getting one that's a cream, to be honest. Like you can get them as creams, you can get them as gels, you can get them as solutions, as oils. But I think the ones that are best is you should try and get ones that are creams.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like the best ones are usually prescription. So like go to see your local dermatologist and talk to them about your skin. Like they can usually prescribe you a topical retinoid. But otherwise, there are a lot of the beauty brands like the Lancoms of this world and the L'Oreals of this world. They all have retinoid products. Like any reputable skincare brand will always have now a retinoid product because the evidence for it is so clear that like it's just it's obvious that you should, kind of thing.
Okay, right. So I found one: organic retinol serum, 100 ml bottle. 3 times larger advanced retinol delivery system plus 25% vitamin C complex with aloe vera, hyaluronic acid, vitamin E, anti-aging skincare made in Germany.
Oh, that sounds not bad. I mean, yeah, so it's retinol, right? So the retinol is the slightly weaker version, but fine. Like
Okay. I want
it can
retinoid.
still take effect. It can still take effect. So it's not something I would like be overtly worried about.
Okay. But otherwise I can go and like onlinepharmacy.co.uk and get a prescription for myself.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Do you recommend kind of doing these things one at a time and introducing them slowly, or just whole shebang?
No, no need to. I mean, again, like sunscreen, you're going to be using it whenever you're out in the sun, kind of thing, going out. And then the moisturizer and retinol, I'd actually strongly encourage together. So, like, if you're going to be starting a retinol, make sure you're on a good moisturizing regimen because it's going to dry out your skin. And to get the best effects of topical retinoids, you need to have sustained use. So it has its best effects after like almost 3 to 4 weeks of continuous use.
Okay.
But you notice side effects very quickly if you don't moisturize your skin. So one of the main problems I have with patients is like, you'll start them on a regimen like this, and after 2 weeks, they'll feel really dry and it'll irritate their skin, and they won't have seen their like acne go away, so they'll stop using it. So the key thing is like you want to make sure you're moisturizing enough that you're able to continue using the retinoid, and then that's going to put you in good stead, basically.
Okay. Yeah. So it seems on Amazon there isn't actually any retinoid available, so I might have to. But I guess kind of retinol is better than nothing.
Yeah, 100%. Retinol can definitely work. Like you will know if you're putting it on, and if it's making you feel that tightness or slight like desquamation in the corners of your nose the next morning, you know it's working.
Nice. Okay. Amazing. I've just ordered £62.54 worth of skincare stuff.
There you go.
What are you doing to me? This is bad.
It's the problem. It's the problem with being an influencer. It has big responsibilities. My 100 followers on Instagram carry a lot of clout.
This is going well, and I guess this can count as a business expense, right?
I would say so.
Yeah, because
your image is your business.
My face is my brand basically. So
exactly, yeah.
Right. Okay, it's delivered to my address. Amazon Prime. There we go. All right. Thank you very much.
Of course. I'm seeing a bunch of questions here on the chat about skincare.
Yeah, man.
I don't think we can get into all of them right now. Yeah. What's treatment for vitiligo? Is Accutane worth for cystic acne? On the whole, again, discuss it with your dermatologist, but Accutane is worth it for cystic acne. Accutane is really, really good for the right patient in the right circumstance.
Wait, isn't Accutane the one that makes you depressed and suicidal and stuff?
Speak to your dermatologist about Accutane. That's what I would say. But yeah, how to treat vitiligo. Yeah, there's a bunch of treatments for vitiligo. It's very hard to treat vitiligo of the hands and feet. It's very resistant, but there are laser treatments, and there's also topical steroids, and topical tacrolimus ointment can also be used for vitiligo, but discuss it with your dermatologist. Yeah.
Or discuss it with your GP if you're in the UK, and they might refer you to a dermatologist. Yeah. Come on, man.
Discuss it with your dermatologist in 8 months once you've been referred. Okay.
Anyway, okay. I think this is a good place to end it. I've got my skincare routine. Yeah. I've got my dose of motivation to do this freaking USMLE stuff, and I feel excited and remotivated to do it. So thank you.
So I think we'll just say in summary to people, just so anyone who's interested. So again, for skincare people, I hope you got your bit of fun at the end. For the USMLE people, etc. If it's something you're considering, it's a difficult thing to do. It's something which is often uncertain, and that's basically why. So Ali and I and Shireen, we got together and made the Liberty Medics, is because for so many IMGs, if you don't have like a close friend who's done it or someone who's in the year above you who's done it, you really don't know where you're going with things. And to add on to like the difficulty in the whole process, you also have all this uncertainty. Like, am I doing the right thing? Like, am I using the right resources? What kind of study timeline should I use? How do I get electives? Like, how do I make the most of my electives? What are letters of recommendation? What are the visa issues? What about the actual match cycle itself? All these kind of things are things which I lived through myself and which I didn't really have anyone to guide me through. So I made mistakes along the way, and it ended up kind of like you miss the boat for one thing and it delays your timeline by like a year. And so because of that, basically, we got together and made this course called How to Make It in America, which is the name of this deep dive. And the purpose behind it is just that like anyone who has even a remote interest wants to start off by hearing people like me and Ali and Shireen discuss, the pros and cons of going to the US, whether they are true pros and cons, whether there's misconceptions about it, how they want to make their mind about whether it's the right thing to do, and then taking them from that point of like, yeah, you know what, maybe this is the right thing for me to do, all the way through to like matching and visas, immigration and green cards. Like we wanted there to be one place and one course which had like all of this information through sources that are reliable. Us lot who've been through this process ourselves very recently. And then also we give access to something called the Mastermind Community. If you do subscribe to the course, where everyone who subscribed to the course is entitled to join this Mastermind Community, where we're all in it as well. And they ask their questions, they help each other out, they make friends, and then they can also ask us questions and we periodically respond and kind of give people that kind of extra push and guidance as they need it. So that's the reason behind us making this course by Liberty Medics. So check it out below if it's something which is kind of on your mind, and it'll give you kind of lifetime access to this thing, even if you're early on in your process or late on in your process. So I think that's my plug. Do you think it's a good plug?
I think that's a pretty good plug. I was thinking we could even cut that out and have that as an alternative Instagram ad to A/B test against our current one.
There you go. Good thinking.
Despite all the 500 takes that we did the first one in.
They don't need to know about that, Ali. I one take everything, guys,
of course,
for the record.
Of course, yeah, one take, absolutely everything. Okay, good stuff.
Okay, sweet. Well, Ali, this was fun. Thanks for having me on, man.
Thanks for coming on. Thanks for giving me the motivation, and we should do this again in a couple of months when I need more motivation. So
yeah.
by that time, hopefully, I'll know more medicine, and then we can take it from there.
There you go. And message me off the record about the wife situation.
Oh, about the wife situation.
Sort that out as well.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, cool.
You got me. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining this deep dive, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, guys.